Chapter 728. Chang and Drill Ground. It was originally set up in a secluded valley not far from the Shirley Slope. But after Zhang Feng went up Shao Mountain, Li Shimin set up the Chang and garrison camp between Chang'an and Shao Mountain. This camp not only included the garrison, but also included the training of the descendants of the various officials in Chang'an, as well as the training of the imperial guards and city guards. But a few days ago, after Yu Qigong received Zhang Feng's training manual, the lazy atmosphere in the camp suddenly became terrifying. Before this, everyone used the status of their families to say that they were here to train, but in reality they were just here to stay for a period of time. After that, they could go back and do whatever they wanted. But this Yuchi god of plague got a bunch of wood from somewhere and the three army gods appeared in the camp at the same time. That wasn't the most terrifying thing. In these 3 days, the 3 demon kings got a bunch of stones and bamboo baskets from somewhere. At that time, everyone was still squatting in the corner, wondering what they were going to do. But 3 days later, which was last night, their end was here. Every one of them had to carry a 30-gene load and run 3 laps around Shao Mountain. If you didn't finish running, you wouldn't be given food. That was how willful and awesome you were. If you dared to object, you would die. At this time, the sun in the sky was scorching hot. Although they had been running all morning, they didn't dare to complain at all. Because the emperor was coming to inspect today. If the emperor were to see them being so lazy, the 3 demon kings might really break their legs. However, it had already been more than 2 hours. They had been running for more than 2 hours. The emperor wasn't here yet. Everyone was in despair. They were terrified. They thought the 3 demon kings at the gate were targeting them. In contrast to the soldiers' fear, Yu Qigong and the other 2 looked at the gate and couldn't help but be puzzled. Yu Qigong looked at Qin Xiong suspiciously and asked, "Shu Bao, are you sure the emperor said he would come today?" Chang Yaojin stroked his beard and looked at White Deer College in the shadows of Shao Mountain. Did he go to Feng Zi's place? He should be, right? Otherwise, His Majesty would have arrived long ago. The 3 of them looked in the direction of Shao Mountain and then looked behind them at the soldiers who were climbing, running, and jumping on various horizontal bars, rope ladders, or under nets. They could not help but sigh. "Feng Zi, you really have a way. Otherwise, I don't know how useless these bastards would be now." Chang Yaojin laughed and then roared, "It's only been 2 hours, you can't take it anymore? Are you all cowards? Rise for me, Lao Tzu. If anyone dares to slack off, regardless of whether His Majesty comes or not, Lao Tzu will record your every move in detail. When the time comes, we'll let your Lao Tzu see what kind of playthings you are." Everyone, who was already exhausted, almost fainted when they heard this. Damn it, what kind of people were they? Do you have to tell your family about such a small matter? How are we supposed to live? Although everyone was very tired, they could not help but get angry when they heard that everything would be recorded. They gritted their teeth and worked hard again. Chang Yaojin and the other 2 looked into the distance and then looked at the sun in the sky. He smacked his lips and said, "I just heard that Zhang Feng is stirring up trouble on the mountain again. I don't know what those bastards are doing. I don't know what happened to the 300,000 pigs yesterday. Until now, no one has come to say anything. Dad!" Just as the 3 of them were muttering, Chang Chumo rode his mule and galloped over from afar. The 3 of them immediately looked over when they heard the word, "Dad." Chang Yaojin glared at him. "There is no father and son in the army. This is the rule. Did you King feed a dog? Carry 60 gene of weight for Lao Tzu and run 3 laps around Shao Mountain. He is not allowed to come back until he finishes." Chang Chumo, who was on the back of the mule, heard this. His eyes widened and he fell off the back of the mule. His expression changed greatly as he shouted, "Dad, General Chang, I am here to deliver food to the 3 of you under the orders of Master." Chang Yaojin heard this and snorted. When Chang Chumo came to his side, he asked, "Deliver food to the door? Didn't the Crown Prince bring 300,000 pigs up the mountain in the past? You should all know about this." Chang Chumo grinned and smiled foolishly. At the same time, he hurriedly unloaded the 2 wooden buckets on the back of the mule and opened the lids in front of the 3 of them. Instantly, a strong smell of meat wafted out, causing the three of them to stare so hard that their eyes almost popped out. Chang Yaojin did not even care about his son. He grabbed a piece of meat and started chewing. How could Yu Qigong and the other two hold back? When they saw the gravy at the corner of Chang Yaojin's mouth, they also picked up a piece of meat and started chewing. It was as if Chang Chumo had long forgotten that he was good at the army. When the three of them were eating happily, Chang Yaojin wiped his mouth and shouted angrily again, "Damn it! It's a pity that we can't drink alcohol in the army. Otherwise, if we could pair it with Feng Zi's wine, that would be truly enjoyable. Alright, why don't we go up the mountain tomorrow to find him?" Yu Qigong finished a pig's ear and did not even bother wiping his mouth. He grabbed a piece of pig's liver and took a bite. As if he felt that the taste was not good enough, he spat it out and picked up another pig's ear. The three of them walked into the military camp as they ate. At this time, Yu Qigong asked, "Kid, did you see His Majesty on the way?" Oh, I saw him. He went back and swindled Feng Zi's secret winemaking recipe from the mountain and ran away. Chapter 729. Prince Zhenla, Shiva, is here. Prince Zhenla, Shiva, is here. The moment Xiao Gizi and the guards at the entrance of the political announcement hall, the officials in the court finally reacted. They couldn't help but be shocked. Prince Zhenla is here, and it's actually a prince? Could it be that His Majesty insisted on fighting? Amidst the confusion of the crowd, a handsome youth wearing a strange green robe with golden edges slowly walked into the political announcement hall. Behind him were two old men with white beards. Each of them held a yellow rosewood tray that was tightly covered by a red cloth. No one knew what was hidden inside. However, from the bulging part, everyone could faintly feel that this thing was extraordinary. As soon as Prince Zhenla entered the political announcement hall with two people, he respectfully put his right hand on his chest and saluted. Prince Zhenla Shiva is here to greet His Majesty the Tang Emperors. Li Shimin waved his sleeve. Rise! While speaking, Shiva raised his head, took a tray from an old man behind him and said, "This is a letter of credence written by my father to His Majesty the Tang Emperors. I hope His Majesty the Tang Emperors can take a look." Then, Xiao Gizi walked down the hall, checked the letter, and carefully presented it to Li Shimin. This was the second letter Prince Zhenla sent to him. Yesterday, he received a letter from an envoy, but when he returned to the palace, he learned that Prince Zhenla had come. It seemed that Zhenla was really at the end of his rope. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent so many envoys this time and even let Prince Zhenla come in person. Prince Zhenla was equivalent to the crown prince, so it was conceivable that the crown prince would come in person. Sure enough, after Li Shimin opened the letter of credence, the contents of the letter had changed from the previous request to a plea. Li Shimin took a deep breath and asked without changing his expression, "I already know about this matter, but you also know the current situation of the Tang dynasty. Therefore, I have to think about it carefully before I can restore you." Upon hearing this, Shiwa bowed and said, "Many thanks for your Majesty's benevolence and kindness. This humble one came here with the intention of my imperial father. My imperial father said that as long as your Majesty sends out troops, I will do my best to gather enough military supplies for the Tang dynasty. Not only that, I will also deduct 30% of the profits from the past trade. In the future, I, Zhenla, am also willing to sign a permanent vassal state agreement with the Tang dynasty and pay tribute every year." Hearing this, only then did everyone in the court become aghast. Permanent vassal state? Deducting 30% of the profits from all the past trade to the Tang dynasty. The poisonous salt was originally given to the Tang dynasty for free. In exchange, the Tang dynasty only needed to give them 10 caddies of poisonous salt. But in addition, there were other things such as seafood, spices, fruits, and so on which had a lot to do with. Since the establishment of trade and commerce with Zhenla, many people in the imperial court had participated in it. Some people even made a lot of money because of it. Although everyone was worried before, this business only affected the current situation. It would recover one day, but it was different now. If the emperor agreed to help Zhenla, and according to the emperor's current intention, it seemed that he had long wanted to help Zhenla, once he sent out troops. then their interests would be maximized. Li Shimin also fell silent at this time. He slowly swept his gaze across the faces of the ministers in the court before slowly saying, "We know what you have said. However, you also know the current situation. If we blindly send out troops, what kind of consequences will there be? Therefore, we will give you an answer within 3 days." While speaking, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Send an order to all the government troops in South Jiandao, Lingnan, to be ready." Court dismissed. In Li Shimin's indifferent voice, everyone had to suppress the doubts in their hearts and respectfully send Li Shimin off. After everyone left, Shiva glanced at the direction where Li Shimin left and then winked at the two people behind him. He hurriedly left the political announcement hall and went to the Honglu temple. In addition to this matter, he came to the Tang dynasty this time for another matter. That was to visit Zhang Feng. When he was in Jinla, he heard that Zhang Feng seemed to have opened an academy in the Tang dynasty to recruit talents from all over the world. The purpose of his visit this time was to find Zhang Feng. As for this matter, he was confident that as long as the Tang emperors were not fools, they would definitely send out troops. And he had shown his sincerity. He did not believe that the people of the Tang dynasty would not agree. As soon as he left the political announcement hall, Shiva told the two people behind him, "You two go back to the Honglu temple first. I'll go out for a while." An elder of the two asked worriedly, "Prince, it's not too late to go after you have a definite answer. After all, this is a big deal." Shiva was unmoved. He just used his eyes to signal the ministers who had just left the political announcement hall and said, "Look at their faces and think about what His Majesty the Tang emperors just said. You'll understand." While speaking, Shiva hurriedly followed the carriage that was picking up the ministers and disappeared from the sight of the two envoys. Chapter 730. In the imperial study, Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Cheng Yaojin, Yu Qigong, and the others had been waiting here for a long time. After a while, Li Shimin hurried over. After seeing them, Li Shimin directly asked, "You all heard what Prince Xinla said just now, right? Do you think we should send the troops or not?" Yu Qigong hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, we must send the troops. If we don't, how will the countries that have submitted to the Tang dynasty see us? How will the other countries treat us? The salt we use now is basically used by all the people. If we don't send the troops, then the consequences. And the current situation is not a problem of whether to send the troops or not. The biggest problem is the Tang dynasty's attitude towards this matter." Yu Qigong, Cheng Yaojin, and Qin Qiong spoke one after another. In any case, what they meant was that they must send the troops, and they had no choice but to send the troops. And when the three of them finished speaking, Fang Xianling said, "The current situation is that the Tang dynasty can only send 50,000 troops and 50,000? That's enough." Yu Qigong waved his hand and interrupted Fang Xianling. He looked at Li Shimin and said, "Your Majesty, give me 50,000. If Jinla is really in charge of the provisions this time, then this old general has a way to delay the war for 10 days. These 10 days are enough for this old general to send the news to the palace. At that time, Your Majesty will mobilize the troops of the various prefectures to help. This old general will definitely be able to kill all 300,000 Indian soldiers." This was the source of Yu Qigong's confidence. Although the other side had 300,000 people. But who was he? He had fought countless battles, big and small. If he could meet that brat before he left, he could learn a thing or two about military tactics from him. It would be best if he could get some impenetrable shields and armor, or a spear that could pierce through anything. Then, he would have the guts to lead these 50,000 men to clash with the Indian army. The crux of the matter was Zhang Feng. Li Shimin was thinking the same thing. After all, at this time he also knew the seriousness of the matter. Once he broke his promise, let alone Jinla, the Tang dynasty would lose the credibility of the entire business world. At that time, who would dare to do business with them? Therefore, the number of troops sent out at this time must not be small. Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui wanted to say something, but in the end, they swallowed their words. At this moment, they were also aware of the situation. Li Shimin saw that no one was speaking. He said, "Then, gather all the generals. I want to see your military plans before tonight." As he spoke, Li Shimon's expression became slightly better, and he left. "Farewell, your majesty." After they sent off Li Shimon, Du Ruhui stopped Yu Qigong and said, "General Yu Qi, this time the army is of great importance. Even if the Tang dynasty added the government soldiers, how many people can we send out?" Yu Qigong rolled his eyes and said, "What do you mean, General Du?" "What do I mean? Old man, let me ask you. You should know that this matter with Jinla is probably a test by Tubo and India against the Tang dynasty. Are you so sure that 50,000 people can fight against 300,000 soldiers? What if they fail? Won't the Tang dynasty lose face?" Yu Qigong finally understood Du Ruhui's meaning. He glanced at the expressions of Fang Xianling, Wei Zheng, and Zhang Sun. Yu Qigong and the other two laughed. Chang Yaojin patted Zhang Sun Wuji on the shoulder and said, "Brother, don't worry about this. Do you still remember the invincible spear that Fangzi once said?" Wei Zhang and the others heard this and couldn't help but become angrier. "The civil engineering on Fengzi's mountain hasn't finished yet. Do you think Fengzi has the time to do that? Don't you think about it? Now that you've blindly told the emperor this, old man, let's see how you deal with this." "Prime Minister Wei, don't worry." Qin Xiong cupped his hands and said, "Have you heard that little brother Zhang Feng has a military knowledge that is more magical than Sun Tzu's art of war?" Hearing this, the expressions of Zhang Sun Wuji and the others instantly froze. They did know about this, but they didn't know that this thing had become a stabilizing force for someone like Yu Qigong. What on earth was this so-called military knowledge? After the emperor and Chang Yaojin learned about this matter, they also knew about what happened in the Chang and garrison camp. After all, some of their sons were there, and most importantly, their sons were basically by Zhang Feng's side. How could they not know? It was just that they always felt that what Zhang Feng said was just a battle of words. But they didn't expect Yu Qigong to say such things at this time. However, Yu Qigong didn't explain much. As soon as the three of them left the imperial city, they cupped their hands and said to Fang Xianling and the others, "I'll go back to the camp first. Please go and give the order to gather quickly. How about we discuss this matter in my mansion tonight?" Wei Zhang and the others couldn't say anything but cupped their hands. Okay. Chapter 731. The few of them hurriedly returned to their respective departments, from the military department to the Ministry of Works to the Ministry of Appointments and so on. Then, a memorial that was stamped with seals appeared on Li Shimon's desk. Li Shimon took a look and stamped it. Then, an order to summon the army was sent out of the palace. It began to spread from Chang'an City. All the disciples of the military families or the families of military families had to report back to the military ministry after seeing this edict. And at this time, it was the same on Mount Shao. A large number of people received this edict, and the first to leave was the group of veterans of the Rejoice House. After excitedly saying goodbye to Zhang Feng, their eyes showed the long-lost excitement, but there was also a trace of loneliness. No one knew if the war would be gone forever. However, the pride of soldiers in their bones could only be comforted in their dreams at night. Most people thought they were a group of Rakshasa ghosts, but who knew that the battlefield was both love and hate for them? They loved it because they could only experience their value on the battlefield. In Chang'an City, except for Zhang Feng, who did not look at them with disdain. However, on the battlefield, they could express their dissatisfaction and anger as they wished. They hated it because this might be an eternal farewell, or they would linger on with the memories of their brothers that they could never forget. Zhang Feng looked at these people and was a little confused. He quietly pulled Li Qian aside and asked, "What's going on? Could it be that Tufan had attacked? Why did he suddenly issue an edict?" Li Changqian patted Zhang Feng on the shoulder and sighed. "Brother, I guess I'll also go to the battlefield. Iron Bull and the others may also go. If only it was Tubo. This time it's Jinla. Do you remember Prince Jinla who was fooled by you? This time he brought news. I heard that Jinla was invaded by 300,000 Indian troops, and most of the trade route you designed has now fallen into the hands of the Indians. So, you understand." At this time, Chang Chumo, Wei Shuyu, and the others arrived at Zhang Feng's door. They patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, "Brother, take care. You know our business in Jinla. We have to go up, so—" Zhang Feng was a little confused. "Didn't you say that only those who practice martial arts can go? Could it be that they've issued another recruitment order?" When they heard this, they were shocked. Li Chengqian hurriedly explained, "That's not it. We just said that we might go back. This time, it was Father who sent a message, telling us to go home and discuss countermeasures. Who knows, we might really have to part ways this time." Li Chengqian naturally wasn't going to the battlefield, but Cheng Chumo was different. Who was his father? Zhang Sunchong and Wei Shuyu had long wanted to go to the battlefield. Now that they had received the imperial edict, how could they sit still? He also wanted to go to the front line to take a look. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded by this sudden event. He was already used to these guys nagging at him for no reason, but suddenly so many people left, he felt so unnatural. "Can we not go?" Zhang Feng asked in a strange tone. Cheng Chumo glared at Zhang Feng. "We can't go just because you say so? Then what about the 300,000 Indian troops? The point is that Lao Tzu doesn't want to go either. Let's go." Cheng Chumo's eyes were red. He waved his hand and was about to leave. Li Chengqian, "Do go," and the others were fine. They said goodbye to Zhang Feng and prepared to leave. Zhang Feng was silent. But after a while, Zhang Feng looked at the door and shouted, "Come back! Come back! Lao Tzu has a way." The few of them stopped in their tracks. Zhang Feng could not help but wonder if these guys were really going to go down the mountain to join the army or do something else. But all of this was not important. Everything on the mountain, whether it was the food factory, the paper mill, or everything else on the mountain, if these bastards left, wouldn't he become a commander without an army? Zhang Feng looked at the strange expressions on the few of them and sighed. "Whether you are trying to trick me or not, Lao Tzu needs you now. So, I will think of a way for you." "Are you sure you have a way?" Li Chengqian was a little hesitant. But there was also something strange. If Zhang Feng could really create an impenetrable shield in a short time, then it would really be solved. After thinking about it, Li Chengqian felt that it was impossible. Not to mention other things, how long would it take to make a shield out of stubborn iron? How many could he make in such a short time? But Li Chengqian still asked, "Fengzi, do you have a way?" Zhang Feng was not in a hurry. Lying back on the recliner, he thought for a while and said, "Are you talking about the Indian invasion of Jinla? I remember when Tubo's rebellion broke out, I heard your father talk about this. Did you not think that these two things might be the same thing? In other words, the Indian invasion of Jinla this time might have been premeditated by Tubo." Chapter 732. As Zhang Feng's voice fell, Li Chengqian's face turned pale. Li Chengqian's face alternated between green and white. The smile on his face was still frozen as he stared at Zhang Feng. After staring for a moment, his eyes seemed to be sore as he paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. This matter was too big. No one thought about Tubo's position. As for the disappearance of 100,000 Turkic elites, no one had expected it. However, now that Zhang Feng said this, Li Chengqian instantly thought of a terrifying possibility. The 100,000 Turkic people might not have disappeared, but they had secretly sneaked into India without anyone knowing. Although this was only a guess, it made Li Chengqian feel that there was a conspiracy behind it. Suddenly, Li Chengqian's eyes narrowed. "Fengzi, you mean to say that the missing 100,000 Turkic soldiers have already infiltrated India, and at the same time instigated internal strife in Tibet, as well as the most genuine war with Latvia? Their intention is to divide the great Tang army?" Cheng Chumo and the others could not help but be shocked when they heard this. However, when Li Chengqian finished speaking and looked at Zhang Feng, he realized that Zhang Feng was staring at him with his mouth agape. "Li Chengqian, how did you know? Who told you this?" Zhang Feng really did not know about this matter. At this moment, Li Chengqian saw that he was going off topic and hurriedly said, "Well, when I went down the mountain last time, didn't I coincidentally meet Lord Zhangsun in my residence to discuss the trade route in Tubo with my father? At that time, Lord Zhangsun even praised you." "That's right. Don't change the topic." When Zhang Feng heard this, he interrupted Li Chengqian's chatter. He frowned and fell into deep thought. The recliner under his butt was squeaking non-stop. After a while, Zhang Feng's toes touched the floor and the squeaking sound disappeared instantly. If the Turks really did dispatch 100,000 people, then this matter will be troublesome. In other words, the Turks are setting up a huge net, waiting for the soldiers of the Tang dynasty to fall into it. When Li Chengqian heard this, his expression involuntarily changed. Do you mean that the current matter of Tubo and Jinla is all a conspiracy of India against the Tang dynasty? If that's the case, his real intention is to invade the Tang dynasty? Li Chengqian was a little flustered. The 100,000 soldiers who had set off for Tubo were completely unaware of this matter. Furthermore, based on the current situation, it was indeed a little interesting. The 100,000 Turkic soldiers seemed to have suddenly vanished. Combined with the current situation, there was a high chance that they had been hiding in India and Tubo for some time, and many of them had even entered Jinla. Zhang Feng thought for a while and nodded. That's right. Think about it. If you were given a sandbox of 100,000 people, and there were hundreds of thousands of hungry people behind you, but the people next to you were well-fed and warm all day long, what would you do? Now, think about how you should use this sandbox. If your neighbor's power is as strong as yours, what would you do to feed the people behind you? Li Chengqian was a little confused. However, Chang Chumo instantly understood. After all, he had played with sandboxes a lot. Fengzi, do you mean that this matter of Tubo and Jinla is a Turkic action against the Tang dynasty? And their purpose is to take down the Tang dynasty? Or they want to use this method to fight against the Tang dynasty? Zhang Feng nodded fiercely. At this time, he was thinking about the war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks next year, which was buried deep in his memory. In the third year of Jingguan, the war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks broke out. In this battle, Zhang Feng had thought that by nibbling away at the Turks would be able to achieve a complete victory. But now it seemed that the Turks were no fools. They had also understood the great Tang's intentions. It seemed that India's sudden dispatch of troops was not without purpose. At this time, if they divided the troops, it seemed that they would fall into the Turks' trap. At that time, the garrison of Longyu Road and the defense of Tubo and other places would be lax. The Turks' army might catch them off guard. At that time, even if the people sent by the Tang dynasty wanted to come back to help, it would be too late. Li Chengqian and the others also understood at this time. Their faces were pale. However, after understanding all this, Zhang Feng was not in a hurry. Looking at Li Chengqian and the others, he said, "Don't be anxious about this matter. Soldiers will be deployed, but not to Jinla. All of your properties will be saved. Now, you guys just have to obediently wear it for me. If you don't manage the academy well, you won't graduate. If you dare to run away, even if you beg me in the future, don't think of taking a step into the academy." In the face of Zhang Feng's threat, Li Chengqian automatically ignored it. Instead, he asked, "Do you mean that we won't save Jinla? But now I heard that Prince Jinla has come to the Tang dynasty." Zhang Feng's interest was piqued and he asked, "Does he have the same idea as Tufan? As long as the Tang dynasty sends troops, they will provide the provisions?" Hearing this, Li Chengqian, Chang Chumo, Zhang Sun and the others looked at each other and then nodded. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said with a smile, "Then don't worry. As long as our emperor is not a fool, he will not send troops this time. And how can there be such a good thing in the world? Think about it. Who doesn't lack food? But why do they have to dig out so much military provisions from their teeth?" Chapter 733. Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up. On the mountain path of Shao Mountain, 5 fine horses were galloping. Along the way, when people saw these 5 fine horses, they wanted to scold them. However, when they saw the 5 masters riding on them, they immediately swallowed the words they wanted to scold in their hearts. But at the same time, they were also shocked. Although the 5 lords said that the Devil King's temperament had improved a lot after entering Shao Mountain, why was it still the same as before? Why were they so careless? "I heard that when it was getting dark yesterday, Jinla's people came." After Li Chengqian and the other masters left, the crowd couldn't help whispering, I heard that the White Harry from Tinju is going to attack Xinla. What does that have to do with us? Hey, who said it has nothing to do with us? Do you still want to eat salt? Where do you think the salt we eat now comes from? It's all made by our dean. And I also heard an interesting story. Before our dean came to Shao Mountain and made a fortune, didn't he have a tavern in Chang'an City? That day, Prince Xinla and Princess Xinla went to the tavern and met our dean. They were originally covered with jewels, but when they came out, do you know what they became? The crowd couldn't help but be interested. That person carried a basket of bricks on his back and said, "Those two idiots were tricked by our dean. Other than the clothes on their bodies, they don't have anything left." Hiss. Is that true? Yes. So what's the purpose of Xinla's people coming this time? Are they sending treasures to our dean again? Who knows? But looking at the five masters' actions, maybe Xinla is in trouble this time. Didn't you see that the edict was issued this morning? The group of veterans of the Enlu house went down the mountain like crazy. What? Is something really going to happen? Hiss. On the other side, Li Changqian waved his horsewhip and rushed all the way to Chang'an City, and then rushed all the way to the Imperial City. It was hard not to attract attention along the way. Everyone couldn't help but think of Jin La's visit yesterday and today's edict. Chang'an City could not help but become jittery again. Li Changqian and the others galloped, dismounting outside Taiji Palace. Holding the crown prince's token, they entered the imperial study under the shocked gazes of the golden guards. Li Shimin had been waiting for a long time. Seeing Li Changqian and the others enter, he waved his hand, indicating Chang Chumo and the others to leave. Only then did he ask, "Why are you so alarmed? Zhen only asked you to come back and participate in General Chang and the others' discussion on this expedition to Xinla. Why are you acting so exaggeratedly?" Li Changqian was greatly alarmed when he heard this and hurriedly said, "Imperial Father, this son came precisely for this matter." Li Shimin raised his eyebrows. Did Feng Zi say something shocking again? Feng Zi said that this is a scheme of the Turks. When Li Shimin heard this, the indifferent expression on his face suddenly changed. He hurriedly asked, "Speak." When he learned that Li Changqian and the others had broken into the imperial city, he thought of many possibilities, but he once again underestimated Zhang Feng's intelligence. He had actually spoken of the matter that Li Shimin was most worried about. Moreover, Zhang Feng had known nothing about the 100,000 Turks. There was a high chance that these brats had only revealed it in a moment of desperation. In a short moment, he was able to overlook the entire situation and hit the key points. This made Li Shimin somewhat believe Li Changqian's words. Imperial Father, Feng Zi said that the Tubo incident, as well as the Xinla and India incident, were all manipulated by the Turks. They had long been sure that our Tang dynasty would send troops to rescue Xinla. Think about it, twice it was them who provided the provisions. This is not normal. When Li Shimin heard this, he could not help but think of this strange matter that made his eyelids twitch. He had always felt that something was wrong. However, he could not figure out why he gave Yu Qigong and the others a day to discuss this matter. But now, Li Shimin was instantly enlightened by Li Changqian's words. No wonder I have been thinking that since they have provisions for 100,000 people, they may not be unable to quell the rebellion. Why did they ask our Tang dynasty to send troops? It turns out that the Turks have long turned into Tubo rebels, and then used the old tricks of the Tang dynasty to promote Tubo. From the military and rumors, they mistakenly thought that this matter was serious. That's why they came to ask the Tang dynasty for help in such a panic. I see. I understand now. Li Shimin slammed his fist on the table, instantly startling the four people waiting at the door. Li Shimin did not care so much. He hurriedly walked down from the dragon throne and asked, "Is what you said true?" But when he said this, Li Shimin did not feel that it was inappropriate. After all, this matter was too big, so big that Li Shimin felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Li Changqian nodded heavily. Your son has thought about this matter for a long time and also feels that it is very strange. Imperial Father. Look. While speaking, Li Changqian pointed at the map on the wall of the imperial study and said, "This is the location of our Tang dynasty, and the 100,000 troops were gathered in Yuzhou. That is to say, Tuli Khan and Shelley are bound to meet. Otherwise, how could the 100,000 troops enter that good fox Shelley's territory so easily? Moreover, we were too ruthless to the Turks some time ago, and the Turks were in internal strife at that time. Do you still hear about the Turks' internal strife now? Li Shimin's expression changed when he heard that. Li Chengqian continued. First, Tubo broke out in internal strife, and then Tuli mobilized 100,000 elite troops. After that, Tubo asked for help, and then India suddenly sent troops. But these 100,000 elite Turks did not move at all. This? Chapter 734. At this moment, Li Chengqian didn't need to say anything. Li Shimin had long understood. If all of this wasn't a conspiracy of the Turks, then it would be strange. Li Shimin put his hands behind his back and walked in front of the map. After a long time, he asked, "Did Fengzi say what we should do?" He said that Imperial Father was already mentally prepared. Li Chengqian said with a headache. Hearing this, Li Shimin's expression froze. Then he couldn't help but sigh. This Fengzi really gave me a difficult problem. I almost had to send troops. Li Chengqian thought for a while and said, "However, Fengzi seems to mean that the troops will be sent, but not to Jinla." Not to Jinla? Then where to? Li Shimin stared at the map. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't figure it out. At present, the best way was to immediately send troops and then enter Jinla to suppress India. Otherwise, when the troops arrived, everything would be over. But this kid said that he wouldn't go to Jinla? Then, thinking of the request that Zhang Feng asked Li Chengqian to convey to Jinla and Tubo, Li Shimin pointed at the map and asked in surprise, "Does Fengzi mean that Jinla's request for troops this time was completely due to the Turks and Indians deliberately leaking the news? What is their purpose? Could it be for, come, quickly summon Yu Qigong, Chang Yaojin, and Qin Xiong into the palace? Even if the horses run to death, I want to see them within a quarter of an hour." Chang Chumo and the others who were kneeling outside the door heard this and felt their heads explode. They secretly looked back at the deep palace courtyard and couldn't help but be speechless. Did they really want the horses to run to death? Such a long distance, even if a horse galloped all the way, it would still take an hour. It seemed that the matter this time was really serious. Dong Bang Wu. Not long after Li Shimin's voice was transmitted, the news instantly reached the drum tower. After receiving the name, the drum tower heavily beat the drum 3 times. After hearing the 3 drum beats, the guards on the city wall of Zhuke Gate were as if they were facing a great enemy. An old general who understood the meaning of the drum beat personally took the hammer in the guard's hand and slammed it on a bronze gong the size of a millstone. In an instant, a piercing sound of the gong melodiously spread from the tower of Zhuke Gate. The sound of the gong was very subtle. After the first knock, the bell rang twice in a row, and then there was no more sound. After the second sound of the gong, a long and melodious sound of a horn sounded from the direction of the Chong and military camp, that is, the gate of Chong and City. This was a kind of temptation that no one else could understand, but only the generals in the army could. This was the command. It meant that the emperor had encountered an extremely serious matter. No matter what he was doing, he had to put it down and quickly enter the palace. This was the fastest way to transmit military intelligence in ancient times. It was a signal transmission method other than the smoke signal. At this time, in Yu Qigong's mansion, Chang Yaojin and the others were sitting around the sand table, arranging their troops. While they were arguing until their faces were red, they suddenly heard the faint sound of a gong. Yu Qigong and the others' faces changed greatly. They hurried out of the room and listened carefully. At this time, they heard the melodious sound of a horn coming from the gate of Chong and City. They couldn't help but change their expressions. "Let's go. Enter the palace. Someone, prepare 3 horses." Chang Yaojin roared, picked up the broad axe on the shoulder of the guard in the corner, and quickly rushed out of Yu Qigong's mansion. After that, the 3 of them didn't even have time to put on their official robes. They each took their weapons and hurried to the imperial city. They didn't know what had happened to the emperor. This was a communication method that they were familiar with but also strange to them. Only they, who had experienced the change of the Xuanwu Gate, knew the meaning of it. But now the emperor was using it. It was obvious how serious the situation was at this time. How could the three of them dare to say anything? Along the way, the horse whips cracked loudly. But even so, it still took them almost an hour to arrive at the imperial study. As soon as they entered, Chang Yaojin was the first to raise his broad axe and say, "General Chang Yaojin greets the emperor. Rise, rise. Let me ask you, have you discussed any countermeasures?" Hearing this, Chang Yaojin glanced at Yu Qigong and said, "Your Majesty, I feel that there is something wrong with this matter." But old man Yuchi said that he wants to change the route to enter Jinla from Tubo. "Let me ask you, what do you think is wrong?" Li Shimin impatiently interrupted Chang Yaojin, looked at the three of them again and asked, "I want to know, what do you think is wrong?" Hearing this, Chang Yaojin then said, "It's the food problem of Tubo and Jinla. No matter if it's 50,000 or 100,000 people, according to our informants, currently India and Tubo are all affected by the food shortage, especially Tubo and the Turks. Although Jinla has been trading with us before, it can only be regarded as using the power of the whole country to stockpile food for 100,000 people. So, I feel that there is something wrong with this matter. It's completely unnecessary. Especially Tubo. Does it need to go through so much trouble to quell internal strife?" After Chang Yaojin finished speaking, Li Shimin's expression became more dignified, and he pointed at Yu Qigong and Yu Qigong. The two of them said basically the same thing as Chang Yaojin. Li Shimin's heart couldn't help but thump. He said, "You should have heard about the crown prince coming down the mountain just now, right?" The news he brought was that Fengzi said that this was a conspiracy of the Turks, and he suspected that old thief Tuli's 100,000 elites had already entered Tubo and India. But I feel that since Tuli has made a move, it's impossible for Xieli to not make a move. Hearing this, Chang Yaojin and the other two's expressions changed greatly. Li Shimin continued, "So, I feel that it's very likely that Xieli has also mobilized at least 100,000 troops." Chapter 735. What? Xieli also made a move? Hearing this, Yu Qigong and the other two's expressions changed greatly. Yu Qigong hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, do you mean that the Indian army this time is likely to have gathered Xieli Tuli's elites and mixed in with the Indian army? Do they mean the hinterland of the Tang dynasty?" Li Shimin narrowed his eyes and pointed at the map. "Do you think that if all the available people of the Tang dynasty go to Tubo and Jinla, and the Turkic elites descend from the sky from anywhere in this open space, who in the Tang dynasty can stop them?" Li Shimin pointed at Longyu Road, Guanyi Road, and Jianan Road, which was close to Tubo. Hearing this, Yu Qigong and the other two's eyes showed a trace of shock. If the emperor hadn't pointed it out, then who would have thought of this? If all the available troops went to Tubo and India, it would inevitably cause an internal emptiness. Once the Turkic people appeared, it would be too late even if they wanted to go back to help. Yu Qigong and the other two couldn't help but be angry. If the kid on the mountain hadn't discovered it in time, they might have fallen into the trap by now. Yu Qigong didn't know what to do at this time. He asked, "Then, should we send the troops now?" Li Shimin looked at the map in silence. "Yuchi, let me ask you three. Now that you know the situation, do you still want to send the troops?" This time, Yu Qigong and the other two were stumped. If they went, what would happen to the Tang dynasty? If they didn't go, wouldn't they be subjected to public opinion? By then, wouldn't those countries dependent on the Tang dynasty be in chaos? This was really a dilemma. Seeing that the three didn't speak, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel disappointed. But thinking about it, even he didn't dare to make a conclusion on this matter so easily. It could only be said that the person who came up with this idea had calculated the situation of the Tang dynasty to the smallest detail. Send the troops. This would give them a chance to head south. If they did not send troops, the Tang dynasty would also be in danger due to public opinion. This was simply vicious to the extreme. Forget it. You guys go back and arrange the route first. Do what you should do as usual. Let me think about it first. The three of them were shocked. He hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, you... Get out!" Li Shimin coldly shouted. Only then did the three of them leave the imperial study. Li Changqian also wanted to leave, but Li Shimin didn't say anything, and he didn't dare. He could only stand there quietly. Li Shimin quietly looked at the map, and Li Changqian also unconsciously looked at the map. Thinking back to what Zhang Feng had just said, he couldn't help but say, "Father, Fengzi just told us something. Speak." Fengzi said that if we were given a sandbox and a setting, how would we be able to arrange a perfect formation on the sandbox when the people who set us up are running out of food and the neighboring country is rich in resources? Li Shimin was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly waved his hand and came to the study on the right side of the imperial study with Li Changqian. In the corner of the study, there was a sandbox covered with red gauze, which had long been covered with dust. Li Shimin tore off the gauze. It was a huge sandbox of the Tang dynasty, the surrounding countries, Sherwei, Goguryeo, and other countries. Li Shimin bent over, squinted his eyes, and used a bamboo stick to make some gestures. After a long time, he pointed at the tubo. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. He sighed and said, "Qian, how long do you think it will take to make the invincible spear that Fengzi mentioned?" This time, Li Changqian asked the question. Li Changqian thought for a moment before saying, "Father, I think that Fengzi might be able to make it in 10 days. However, if he wants to equip the entire army, it will take at least a month. At the very least, this is if Fengzi goes all out and cooperates with all the top blacksmiths of the Tang Empire. That might be possible. A month? 10 days? It's too late." Li Shimin slammed his fist on the sandbox. "Let's go to the mountain. I want to ask Fengzi in person." After Li Shimin finished speaking, he hurriedly walked away with large strides. Li Changqian stared blankly for a moment before hurriedly following. As soon as they left the imperial study, Chang Chumo and the others, whose legs were numb from waiting, were about to salute Li Shimin, but he ignored them and left in a hurry. Looking at Li Shimin's back, they were dumbfounded. They were just ignored by Yu Qigong and the others, and now they were ignored by the emperor. They seriously wondered if they had provoked someone. Did it have to be like this? Seeing Li Changqian come out, they grabbed him and asked, "Changqian, what's going on? We just heard that the emperor seemed to be angry." Li Changqian flicked his sleeves and glared at them, but he didn't say anything. He hurriedly said, "Quickly follow the emperor to the mountain. Don't ask too much. I'll tell you later." Hearing this, they were even more dumbfounded. But seeing the emperor and Li Changqian running away in a hurry, they could only look at each other and then hurriedly follow. Chapter 736. At this time, Zhang Feng was also a little restless. Just now, Li Changqian and the others went down the mountain after all. After they left, Zhang Feng had a rare moment of peace and quiet. He recalled all the things in his memory about Xingguan 3 years ago. But the more he thought about it, the more he found that there must be a master in the Tujue. Otherwise, who could be so clear about every move of the Tang dynasty? And he even figured out the emperor's mind so accurately? Send troops? That was exactly what they wanted. If they didn't send troops, then the public opinion offensive that Zhang Feng had played a long time ago would put the Tang dynasty in a disadvantageous position. At that time, the Tujue would still have to go down south. It seemed that in the 3rd year of Xingguan, which was next year, the historical Li Shimin was also driven to desperation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been in such a hurry to start the war. It should be noted that although he was there now, so the Tang dynasty avoided the plague of locusts next year, he didn't know whether it was the butterfly effect or something else. This time, it seemed that because of his arrival, it was also a kind of reflection of the chain reaction caused by him. After all, major historical events were inevitable. Although Zhang Feng could change and promote the perfect ending of this event, he still couldn't stop it from happening. This made Zhang Feng a little doubt whether he had traveled to the real torrent of history or to a parallel world. However, Zhang Feng still believed that it was because of his arrival that caused a series of butterfly effects. Otherwise, how could this be explained? But this was all Zhang Feng's guess. But when he thought of these things, Zhang Feng couldn't help but have a headache again. Calculating the time, it had already been 7 months. This dam system, when would it be activated? F***CK. Zhang Feng couldn't help but make an international gesture to the window. But at this moment, there was a sudden explosion outside the door. Zhang Feng was so scared that he trembled, thinking that he had suffered retribution. As soon as he came back to his senses, Zhang Feng faintly heard someone knocking on the door. Only then did Zhang Feng heave a deep sigh of relief. As soon as he opened the door, Zhang Feng saw Li Shimin's eunuch, Xiao Gizi, bending over and quietly staring at him. Ding! Zhang Feng almost slapped him. Zhang Feng was scared of Xiao Gizi from the bottom of his heart. If he wasn't Li Shimin's personal attendant, Zhang Feng would have urged Li Shimin to replace him. But at this time, Zhang Feng couldn't care so much. He glanced at Li Shimin's solemn face and couldn't help but be stunned. Lao Li, what's wrong with you? Hurry up. Where do you want to sit? As Zhang Feng greeted Li Shimin, he glanced behind Li Shimin and found that Li Chengqian and the others had also come back timidly. But they didn't enter the door. They just stood at the door, not knowing what they wanted to do. Zhang Feng saw that he couldn't call them, so he was too lazy to call them. He directly closed the door and said, "There's no good wine today. We've drunk all the wine." Li Shimin smiled bitterly. "How can I still be in the mood to drink? Now you know that India is going to war with Jinla. Basically, all my industries are either in Longyu Road, Guanyi Road, and Jianan Road. These are all passing through Jinla and are close to Tubo's trade routes. If it's really like what you said, then once the war starts, won't my industries be finished? Do you think I still have the mood to do these things?" Li Shimin had a splitting headache. When he thought of the newly restored trade of the Tang dynasty and the thriving national conditions, he instantly became worried. When Zhang Feng saw Li Shimin like this, he thought that he was going to suffer a big loss this time. He hurriedly comforted him. "Old brother, since you're here, it means that your son told you what I said. Didn't you say that it's very likely that the emperor won't send troops? What if he doesn't send troops?" Li Shimin hurriedly asked. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder, then reclined comfortably on the recliner and said, "Who told you that the emperor won't send troops? I just said that he won't send troops to Jinla. And this time, I guess the emperor will not only send troops, but also establish his power and deter the Turks." When Li Shimin heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't think of this. When Zhang Feng said this to establish his power, Li Shimin immediately became interested. He couldn't help but ask, "Tell me, how is the emperor going to establish his power? And what's going on with this dispatch of troops? Why are you getting more and more confused? Of course you don't understand." Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "If you understood, you wouldn't be a businessman. What is this? This is something the emperor is worried about. Why do you care so much? This is a national affair. It's better if you don't understand." Li Shimin's face darkened. How could he say this? He could only ask, "Isn't this because you're worried about my industry? Why don't you tell me how you're going to do it? By the way, I have some industries under my name, especially the poisonous salt mine in Jinla, which seems to be half of your industry. Are you going to watch all your industries disappear?" Zhang Feng was stunned. "My industries?" Chapter 737. Zhang Feng was a little dumbfounded. He only remembered that he had given this salt-making technique to Lao Li just to show off. But how could he have known that this thing could make money? But then Zhang Feng's eyes couldn't help but burn. He rubbed his hands and asked, "Well, Lao Li, tell me, how much did I make from this thing? You also know that my academy has just started, and I need money for everything. I'm worried about this. You're really my god of wealth." Li Shimin instantly felt as if there was a fly stuck in his throat. It was suffocating. However, he really didn't care about this little bit of money. However, this kid had already forgotten about this matter completely. In an instant, Li Shimin had an impulse to vomit blood. Jinla's poisonous salt was basically given to the Tang dynasty. 10 carriages of poisonous salt in exchange for 1 carriage of salt, and it was the coarse salt that was produced in the first process. Even so, the people of Jinla thought that they had gotten a big bargain, not to mention that these coarse salt were basically sold in large quantities to the Turkic Tubo and other countries at the price of 10 copper coins per kilogram. As for the fine salt in the Tang dynasty, it was basically 1 copper coin per kilogram. Although it was cheap, it was basically used by everyone except those who lived deep in the mountains and forests. Millions of people. This was an astronomical figure. Li Shimin took a deep breath and looked up at Zhang Feng's face. He shook his head and found it funny. When did you become so vulgar? Vulgar? Don't you know that you don't know the cost of firewood and rice if you don't manage the household? Now I'm just sitting there and eating. If you don't think of a way, what can you do? Ignoring Zhang Feng's incessant retort, Li Shimin said, You should be able to calculate the price of this thing. After all, you were the one who set the price of this thing in the first place. There are hundreds of large and small salt-making workshops in the various prefectures of Jianan Circuit, and that's not counting the ones set up by the government. Every day, each workshop can produce about 500 kilograms of fine salt and about 3,000 kilograms of export coarse salt. The export coarse salt is 10 copper coins, and the domestic fine salt is 1 copper coin. If the fine salt is exported, the price will be about 1 copper coin. Do you have an idea now? So much. When Zhang Feng heard this, his eyes almost popped out. He spread out his hands and said, Then give me some money first. I'm so poor that I don't even have enough money to eat. You still know how to ask for money? Now these workshops and your source of income are all cut off. Even if I give you some money now, what will you do in the future? Don't just be a shopkeeper. When Zhang Feng heard this, he came out of his beautiful fantasy of waiting to receive money. Although this thing was just thrown to Li Shimin casually at the beginning, he didn't expect that this thing could become popular in the Tang dynasty in such a short time. Now when he heard it, Zhang Feng felt like he was in Tesco. However, Lao Li still had a conscience and gave him some shares. But at this time Zhang Feng thought for a while, then stood up and walked around the room twice before saying, Lao Li, actually, what do you think about the matter of Jinla this time? Li Shimin rolled his eyes. He chose to ignore it. If he knew the way, would he come here? Did he have nothing to do? Do you think I would come to you if I knew the way? Li Shimin couldn't help complaining in the end. Zhang Feng touched his nose, coughed and said, Actually, you just need to stay calm about this matter. His Majesty already has a plan. Plan? I just heard from Chen that you said His Majesty is not going to send troops to Jinla? Li Shimin saw that he finally got to the main topic, so he hurriedly asked. Zhang Feng shook his finger. No, it's not that His Majesty is not going to send troops. His Majesty should be able to understand the current situation. Of course, you definitely can't understand it. Then tell me about it so that I can be mentally prepared. You also know that a large number of my goods are now detained in Tubo and other countries. Once the war starts, not only will we lose Jinla, this fat piece of meat, but we may also lose all our trade routes. Aren't you worried at all? Moreover, the current situation is not a problem of whether to send troops or not. But what if we are attacked from both sides once we send troops? Li Shimin finished what he wanted to say in one breath. This time, he really didn't have any time to brag and chat with Zhang Feng. Now, he didn't know how many people the Tujue had sent out, nor did he know what conspiracy was behind this matter. As the emperor, how could he not be worried? This time, if there was another White Horse Alliance, Li Shimin would definitely go crazy. Moreover, he also knew that if the Tujue really came to the south this time, it wouldn't be to scare people. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't want to joke anymore. He knew that Lao Li was really worried about the current situation. Zhang Feng didn't even think about it. He dipped the cup in water and wrote 4 big words on the table. Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao. When Li Shimin saw these words, he was shocked. He couldn't help but frown. You mean? Chapter 738. Li Shimin knew the story of besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. After all, he had come from a military background, so he knew the various military operations like the back of his hand. But now that Zhang Feng was talking about besieging Wei to rescue Zhao, Li Shimin couldn't understand. He hurriedly asked, Feng Zi, by besieging Wei to rescue Zhao, you mean that His Majesty wants to send troops to deal with the Turks? Who told you that? If there's nothing wrong with His Majesty's head, no human would say such a thing. I said that you weren't cut out for this, but you didn't believe me and insisted on asking. Li Shimin was once more looked down upon by Zhang Feng. But none of this was important. Li Shimin didn't get angry, continuing to ask, Then why don't you tell me? Should we send troops or not? Where should we send them, And what do you mean by besieging Wei to rescue Zhao? Li Shimin's mind was in a mess. How could he think of so many things? Zhang Feng pursed his lips and looked at the panicked Li Shimin like he was looking at a country bumpkin, slowly shaking his head. If I say that you don't understand, then you really don't understand. Come, I'll explain it to you in detail. Can also be considered as a science lesson for you. Otherwise, if you walk out like this, I'll lose face. As he spoke, Zhang Feng took out a piece of straw paper, a brush, ink, paper, and an inkstone, as well as a thin bamboo stick. On the paper, he roughly sketched out the Tang dynasty and the surrounding terrain. Then, he pointed at the intersection of Tubo, India, and Jinla. Look, this is the intersection of the three kingdoms. Look here. As he spoke, Zhang Feng used the bamboo stick to point at the Anxi Protectorate and then wrote the words Chotzi City. Li Shimin instantly understood the approximate location of this map from the circles of various sizes. Then, Zhang Feng drew a long dotted line from the vicinity of Chotzi City to Longyu Circuit and said, if our soldiers set out from Guanyi Circuit and work with all the soldiers of Longyu Circuit to set up defenses along the way, then enter Chotzi City from a diagonal line, cross Tubo, and work with a portion of the Tang dynasty soldiers in Tubo to directly attack India, wouldn't this instantly solve Jinla's dilemma? Li Shimin was dumbfounded. His eyes stared straight at the map, unable to speak for a long time. He instantly understood what Zhang Feng meant by besieging Wei to rescue Zhao, but what was the use? Fengzi, I heard that old bastard Tuli has already arranged 100,000 elites from Yuzhou. Didn't you say so yourself? It's very likely that these 100,000 people have already entered Tubo and India. The war between the two countries is also very likely a plot related to these Turkic elites. If you do this, won't you be attacked from the front and the back? You must know that the number of soldiers that the Tang dynasty can mobilize, including the soldiers of the various prefectures, is at most 200,000. If these people are all trapped, won't our Tang dynasty completely open the western gate to the Turks? Moreover, you have to understand that Tuli and Shelley have always been at odds. What does it mean that Tuli's 100,000 elites can enter Shelley's territory mean? This shows that Tuli and Shelley must have reached some kind of consensus. Therefore, I think this time the Tujue have dispatched more than 100,000 men, most likely 200,000. It is also possible that the 300,000 men from India are basically Tujue people. Do you believe me? Li Shimin said everything that he wanted to say in one go. Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin in surprise. Not bad, Lao Li. I didn't expect you to have made some progress. Your guess is correct. Although Tuli and Shelley are uncle and nephew, they have long been like fire and water. Moreover, the disaster and famine this time have already caused a large scale of friction. Tuli's people being able to enter the Western Turks safely is a very big problem. But until now, there has been no news. What does that mean? There's a trick in this. The reason why I said to besiege Wei to rescue Zhao, as well as using Chotzi City as the starting point, is actually based on His Majesty's usual strategy. Chotzi City is an important stronghold. It can reach the Tujue and penetrate deep into Tubo's hinterland. If you were given 100,000 men, I think that even if you brought 100,000 men and did nothing but parade around Tubo, it would still make India and the Tujue nervous. But what's the use of this? We are now thinking of how to resolve the situation in Jinla. Li Shimin spread out his hands. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and said, Don't be anxious. Let me finish. Li Shimin's face darkened. Get to the point. Okay. Actually, if you bring 100,000 people from Chotzi into Tubo, your goal is to attract the attention of the Turks in India, and then kill your way into India in a high-profile manner. What do you think will happen if your 100,000 people enter India? Even if India announces that 300,000 people are stationed in Jinla, that means that their defense will be focused on the border with Jinla. As for the border between Tubo and the Turks, there will be a gap in their defense. Once they know about this, do you think they will continue to attack Jinla, or go back to reinforce? Li Shimin stared at the simple map drawn by Zhang Feng. After thinking carefully, he instantly understood. This is what you meant by attacking Wei to rescue Zhao. Chapter 739. It was only natural that Li Shimin would be so shocked. Li Shimin had read more books on the art of war than anyone else. After all, his title as the King of Qin had not come out of thin air. It had been won through battle after battle. But today, Zhang Feng's unprecedented strategy left Li Shimin rather shocked. He was very clear about the military story of besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. However, at this moment, Zhang Feng had given him a whole new level of understanding. Li Shimin couldn't help but wonder if all the books on the art of war he had studied were fake. Otherwise, how could he not understand something so simple that could be solved with a different way of thinking? Fengzi, just what are you thinking? Why can't I think of such a simple thing? But there's one thing I still don't understand. You've said so much, but what if the Turks haven't mobilized all their forces? Or perhaps they've already predicted Chotzi City. After all, the Turks are said to have an army of 1 million. 1 million? And an army? Zhang Feng faintly smiled. Have you forgotten what you did to the Turks? You've already bought all their horses. Do you think they can still muster an army of 1 million? It's already a miracle that they can muster 300,000 horsemen, and you still expect them to have 1 million? The 1 million they said was just a bluff. They can't even muster 500,000. Moreover, the Turks are probably probing. If the Tang dynasty really falls for their trap, then the Tang dynasty will be in danger. Thus, the Turks are gambling. Either they win and drink wine in Chang'an, or they lose and hide in the steppe. Do you understand now? But if we penetrate through Chotzi City, we'll be cutting off this group of people's connection with the Turks. Moreover, if we spread out all the spies we've planted along the way and work with the Tibetan army, even if they have 200,000 soldiers, do you think they'll be a match for us in a long-distance raid? Let's talk about something else. The Turks are good at fighting on the plains, but the soldiers of the Tang dynasty are suited to all kinds of environments. The current environment is more favorable for the soldiers of the Tang dynasty. So, what do you think will happen if we send our troops? In Li Shimin's eyes, there was only deep shock left. Besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. This was not besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. This was killing two birds with one stone. Not only could they solve Jinla's predicament and force the Indians to return, but they would also be able to encircle and annihilate the Turks in Chotzi City. This, Li Shimin murmured. Fengzi, are you talking about the military science you talked about before? Zhang Feng took a sip of tea and said lightly, yes, this is only a small part of military science. It's also called military analysis. Military analysis? A small part? This is called a small part? Li Shimin was speechless. But he still asked, then, what is this tactic called? What is it called? Zhang Feng thought for a while and said, it's called deep battle. This kind of thing was basically known to anyone who had watched TV. However, the people of this era did not know anything about tactics, let alone TV. They only knew how to dive headfirst into it. At most, they would know how to arrange the troops. Who could understand this kind of thing? But what was this? This was something that the martyrs had summed up in War After War. But for Li Shimin, this was something incredible. How could he understand these things? He could not help but ask, what is deep battle? Zhang Feng was speechless. Well, it's hard to explain in a few words. But don't worry. As long as the emperor is not stupid, your property will be saved this time. So don't worry, don't panic. Just wait calmly. Seeing that Zhang Feng was unwilling to talk about it, a hint of disappointment flashed through Li Shimin's eyes. However, he rolled his eyes and said, although what you said does make sense, and perhaps His Majesty also arranged it this way, after all, I have too many people under my command. In addition to the complexity of this war, it is inevitable that some stray soldiers will covet our things. So, what are you going to say? Zhang Feng's ears instantly pricked up. He was still brooding about the wine last time. At this time, Li Shimin's words instantly made Zhang Feng extremely vigilant. Don't expect to get a penny from me. Let me tell you, I have nothing but a set of clothes now. I put them all on for you. If you want anything, don't say it. You won't get it even if you say it. Boy, what kind of person do you think I am? Is it necessary? But this time, I really have something to ask you. Stop talking. I don't want to listen. I can't hear you. I have something to do. I'm leaving. Zhang Feng was furious and hurried to slip away. Li Shimin pulled Zhang Feng back. After a long time, Zhang Feng was finally willing to sit down and listen to him. In fact, it's nothing. Didn't old you say some time ago? Get some guards to guard the place in Tubo and other properties? We have people, but we don't have suitable weapons. Look at your spear that can break everything. Can you? No! Goodbye, I won't see you out. Chapter 740. Zhang Feng couldn't take it anymore. He had just tricked him into giving up the liquor formula. Although in the end, Zhang Feng was still careful and kept the most important blending and distillation formula. But when he thought of this, Zhang Feng felt uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable. He had been playing with the eagle all day, but in the end he was pecked in the eye by the eagle. Seeing that Zhang Feng was about to leave, Li Shimin grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and pressed him down on the recliner. He even personally brought him a cup of tea and said, "Feng Zi, you don't have to do this, right? Who are the two of us? I have a lot of businesses. If it wasn't for your help, how could I, Lao Li, be where I am today? So what's mine is yours, what's mine is still mine." Zhang Feng promptly interrupted Li Shimin. Li Shimin nodded repeatedly. Yes, you're right. But as you can see, it's a chaotic time now. If we don't have a good job, how are we going to survive? Not to mention other things, even the government doesn't like us very much. That's why I had no choice. Taking a step back, Jinla and Tubo and other countries have just opened trade. After this war, no matter if we win or not, the ones who will suffer losses will always be us. Don't you think so? Do you want to wait until the war is over and start again? At that time, do you think we have the capital to reopen the trade route? Li Shimin began to act pitiful. For Li Shimin, this was really a good show. After all, an emperor, which morning court wasn't acting. At this time, when Li Shimin was telling the current state of the country and the situation, Zhang Feng couldn't help but begin to sympathize with Li Shimin. AI, Lao Li, it's not that I don't want to help you. What's the relationship between us? I can't just watch you suffer, right? But as for this matter, you have seen the current state of the academy. Don't worry. Wait for a month. After a month, won't they have refined steel weapons and steel shields? Let's not talk about this. Even if you want me to give you a crossbow with a maximum shooting range of 1,000 steps or an impenetrable armor, I will give you those. But I don't have the time to do that for the time being. 1,000 steps? Li Shimin couldn't help but stare at Zhang Feng with wide eyes. Seeing that Zhang Feng wasn't joking, he hurriedly asked, "Are you serious? As far as I know, the most popular crossbow bolts only have a maximum shooting range of 150 paces, and that's the Zhuge-Chang crossbow. Isn't it just a powerful crossbow at 1,000 paces? If you wait for a month, I will only need 3 days to produce 100 of them for you. That's every day. Is this enough? If you give me a little more time, half a year, no, just 3 months, the Red Barbarian Cannon and Lao Tzu will be ready for you." Red Barbarian Cannon? Li Shimin's eyes bulged, and his breathing quickened. What is that? Zhang Feng decided to be frank. After all, the bigger the pie, the easier it would be for this guy to keep his thoughts to himself. Otherwise, if this guy came today and asked for a sword, spear, and shield, the next day he would beat around the bush and ask for it. It was so annoying. He told them all at once what he wanted to do. Not only would it broaden their horizons, but it would also shut them up completely and give him some time. Otherwise, their thoughts would be stuck in the era of cold weapons. At this moment, Li Shimin was really led astray by Zhang Feng. His mind was filled with question marks about the Red Barbarian Cannon. He couldn't help but ask anxiously, "Tell me, what is this Red Barbarian Cannon? Is it more powerful than the crossbow you mentioned?" Of course, you should have heard of catapults, right? Catapults and Zhuge divine crossbows are a combination of these two things. Not only can catapults throw rocks, but they can also throw fireballs and so on. However, the range of the catapults isn't very far, and they are also very complicated. However, this Red Barbarian Cannon is different. Its range isn't as powerful as the crossbow I mentioned, but it is a great weapon when attacking cities and seizing territories. Once the elixir is thrown out, it will instantly explode, and the thing produced by the explosion can cause a lot of damage to people or objects within a 2 zhang radius. Zhang Feng explained the red barbarian cannon with spittle flying everywhere. As expected, Li Shimin couldn't help but shudder at this moment. He was already so shocked by this magical thing that his heart was in turmoil. At this moment, Zhang Feng's words made Li Shimin completely lose his composure. Lao Li, do you still remember the metal ship I mentioned before? Once the metal ship is built, you can put dozens of red barbarian cannons on it. Think about it, what can your ship do? Even if it's a wall, you can blast it to smithereens from afar, not to mention the impact of the ship. Li Shimin's voice was trembling. Although the five-toothed warship was powerful, it couldn't withstand strong winds and waves. Moreover, the purpose of a ship was to transport things, and it also played an important role in war. However, a real battle on the water was basically a collision between two ships. Regardless of whether the ship won or lost, the damage to the ship would be huge. However, what about this red barbarian cannon? Once it was installed, then, however, Li Shimin also understood at this moment. He calmed down and asked again, Fengzi, just tell me directly, what other treasures do you have? Can you let me take a look? Chapter 741. Sure. Since you want to know, I'll tell you. Forget about the red barbarian cannon. That's just a toy. If I have time, once my research institute is done, I can even make handguns that are simpler than bows and arrows, let alone the red barbarian cannon. That's just child's play. Once I've nurtured some technical talents, I can even make bombs for you. As he spoke, Zhang Feng's voice stopped abruptly. He spread his hands and said, But look at my construction site. It's a huge mess. How do you expect me to make those things for you? I have time and a place. Even if it's the simplest gun, although I said that I can make it within a month, I still need a place and time, don't I? I'm not a god. I want to make them for you, but do you think that's possible? This will all take time. Li Shimin was already dizzy from listening to him. The more he listened, the more he felt that those things were distant. He gradually understood what Zhang Feng meant. Is this guy indirectly saying that I'm short-sighted? However, even if he knew, Li Shimin did not have the heart to get back at him. The handgun that Zhang Feng mentioned at the end had piqued Li Shimin's interest. Fengzi, tell me about this handgun. What are you talking about? It's a waste of saliva. No matter how much you talk about it, I don't have time to make it now. No, tell me about it. I remember that I have a good toy from the previous dynasty. I think it's the personal sword of Emperor Yang of Sui. Zhang Feng's ears perked up at the mention of treasure. Give it to me. I'll tell you about it. Li Shimin smiled. You first. Are you sure that this is the personal sword of Emperor Yang of Sui? Zhang Feng's eyes were burning. Emperor Yang of Sui. Before this amazing person became the emperor, he was quite an amazing person. Unfortunately, he was unlucky and was taken down by someone else. Later generations only had a few rumors about Emperor Yang of Sui. But now, Zhang Feng actually heard about Emperor Yang's personal sword? How could he not be tempted? No matter what, this was something that the emperor had used before. Carrying it around was also a symbol of status. Zhang Feng could not help but ignore Li Shimin's provocation. If you have such a treasure, you should have said so earlier. If you had told me earlier, I would have told you everything. Cough cough, if you want to talk about this flamethrower, the principle behind it is actually very simple, and the manufacturing process isn't that complicated. The most important thing about this thing is its simplicity. How many arrows can an ordinary archer equip on the battlefield? Hearing this, Li Shimin said, Generally, there are 30. For light cavalry, there are about 40. That's right, let's just shoot 50 arrows. This is the problem of weight. If it's too heavy, it will affect the speed. If it's too little, it won't be enough. This is the shortcoming of an archer. But once you switch to a musket, this won't be a problem. You should know about that firecracker Laoli, right? The ammunition for this thing is gunpowder. The impact of the gunpowder will cause the iron sand to shoot out for a short period of time. The strong impact can easily penetrate an ordinary armor. The strong impact can even shoot through a horse. Li Shimin was shocked. However, Zhang Feng's tone changed. He asked, It shouldn't be a problem for each person to carry half a kilogram of gunpowder, right? As long as the ratio of gunpowder is determined in advance, we can just stuff it into the barrel when we need to use it. Half a kilogram of gunpowder and 5 kilograms of iron sand shouldn't weigh more than 30 arrows, right? You calculate. How many times can 5 kilograms of iron sand and 1 kilogram of gunpowder be used? How would Li Shimin know? Zhang Feng stretched out 3 fingers and waved them in front of Li Shimin's eyes. Li Shimin said in a daze, 300 times? Yes. Li Shimin was completely speechless by Zhang Feng's words. However, Zhang Feng did not stop until he was shocked to death. He continued, moreover, the most important part of this thing is a piece of seamless steel pipe. If there is a smelter, I can make a gun for you right now. Really? When Li Shimin heard this, he was instantly energized. Zhang Feng was stunned and nodded subconsciously. When Li Shimin saw this, he grabbed Zhang Feng's arm and pulled him outside. This gave Zhang Feng a fright. Lao Li, let's talk nicely. Why are you pulling me? Let's go to Chang'an City. I'll find you the best blacksmith in Chang. As long as what you said is true, I can even get you a smelter from the Ministry of Works. When Zhang Feng did not tell him the production process of this thing, Li Shimin was a little disappointed. But now, this was undoubtedly a miracle. As long as there was a smelter, he could make it. Then what was he waiting for? As long as he gave the order, how many blacksmiths in the Tang dynasty would not come? What was this? Right now, the war situation was tense, and no one knew what would happen at the front line in the next moment. If they could set up a big killing machine at this time, it would be an overwhelming guarantee for the entire war situation. Li Shimin could see that the Tang dynasty could not lose in this war. Once they lost, the Tang dynasty would not only be facing the Turkic cavalry. It would be everyone. Therefore, Li Shimin wanted to use a perfect war to draw a perfect picture of his political career. At this time, this gun was his hope. Chapter 742. Li Shimin's agitation made Zhang Feng rather suspicious. Lao Li, I say, didn't you just want a few dozen guards? Is there a need for you to be so anxious? Besides, it's not like this toy can be made early on. Even if it's made, without a legal approval, it'll be a disaster. Li Shimin waved his hand, interrupting Zhang Feng. Feng Zi, you should still remember the Lord Zhang's son we know now, right? As long as this thing is good, no matter what kind of approval you want, it'll only take a single word from him, right? Moreover, can't you tell that this is also a huge business deal? Zhang Feng's lips twitched at these words. He seriously suspected that Lao Li's mind was filled with only money. Had he forgotten everything he had said before? Or was it that all he thought about was money? This really was a businessman. Everything he did was related to money. You're right, but I don't dare to touch this money. When the time comes, if you want to do it, you can just say that this toy was made by you. I'll just take the money. Let me say this first. If this toy is done well, you'll make a fortune. If it's not done well, your entire family will be buried with it. You better think this through carefully. Zhang Feng advised again. Think about it. In the history of the past, when has there ever been a person who dealt in firearms ever had a good ending? Moreover, we're dealing with firearms this time. These things can't be compared to cold weapons. Although our emperor is wise and farsighted, not all of his subordinates are as he thinks. If this toy gets hot and causes a disaster, there's no need to talk about how His Majesty will protect you. Those people behind the scenes will destroy your entire family. The first person Zhang Feng thought of was the venomous Hou Junji. In history, this fellow's schemes were unmatched, and for the sake of his goals, he was even willing to sell his daughter. In the end, if he hadn't encouraged Crown Prince Li Chengqian, there wouldn't have been so many problems. But the heavens did not go as one wished. Hou Junji had relied on his status as the emperor's favorite to almost cause the emperor to lose his life and almost cause a second coup at Xuanwu Gate. Once she was targeted by him, that was the consequence. Zhang Feng didn't want to have anything to do with such a person. That would cost him his life. However, Li Shimin didn't take it to heart. He was an emperor. Any emperor would want to establish his authority and prestige, which was also the foundation for the stability of the Tang dynasty in the future. This was the so-called foundation of all ages. But now, on the outside, the Turks were eyeing them covetously. On the inside, the landowning clans and nobles wanted to monopolize certain things, such as knowledge, all sorts of ways to make money, and ways to make their clans prosper for a long time. The landowning clans were too arrogant. They were even more arrogant than the Turks. After decades, centuries, and even millennia, they had used political marriages, teacher and student recommendations, fellow countrymen, servants, county officials, landlords, old officials, and other means to form an invisible net. At the slightest sign of trouble or change in the imperial court, they would instantly tighten the net to protect their own nobles. They would even ally with other landowning clans to do the same. This was fatal to a country. Take the previous dynasty, for example. If the landowning clans hadn't interfered, the Sui dynasty wouldn't have fallen so quickly. If these landowning clans' industries and foundations were to shrink the moment they learned that the Turks were heading south, how could the Tang dynasty be safe? It was time to strike a blow. This was what Li Shimin wanted to do the most at this moment. He could even understand Zhang Feng's words, and it could be said that it was something that had been on his mind all this time. However, Li Shimin saw hope from the gun. Take the Guanlong clans, for example. Although he had long wanted to exterminate them, it was because they were so big that even he had to be wary of the network, so Li Shimin could only slowly nibble at them. He even reshuffled all the ministers in the court. What was the reason? Wasn't it because he wanted to destroy the landowning clan's network in the court? Li Shimin knew that if he wanted to have real power over the court, he had to centralize power. Although power sounded simple, it was not so simple in reality. Before Zhang Feng appeared, Li Shimin had been dispirited and dejected because he couldn't see any hope. However, as he got closer to Zhang Feng, he suddenly felt that Zhang Feng seemed to be the key to him becoming the eternal emperor that Zhang Feng had mentioned. Especially after the 8 Waters incident in Chang'an and the means to deal with Guanlong, Li Shimin couldn't help but see the hope of getting rid of the landowning clans. At this moment, when he heard that Zhang Feng had such a magical thing, how could Li Shimin sit still? Looking at Zhang Feng leisurely lying on the reclining chair, Li Shimin continued, "Feng Zi, don't worry and do it boldly. I can help you solve any problem. Think about it, the emperor basically knows everything about you now. You can do it without worry. As long as you do it, I believe the emperor will naturally reward you. As for other things, don't worry. As long as the problem can be solved with money, it is not a problem for me. Lao Li." Chapter 743. Zhang Feng was a little speechless. "It's starting already? No, Lao Li, look at how busy I am. Aren't you just setting up a guard? You can just do it casually. Besides, you're acquainted with Lord Zhangsun. You can get some military supplies from him, such as crossbows and the like. Won't that be enough? Is there a need to be in such a hurry?" Li Shimin spread his hands and said, "How can I not be in a hurry? War is about to break out. Once war breaks out, it will definitely cause chaos. All of my properties are worth a lot of money. Once war breaks out, it will be an irreparable loss. The sooner I get it done, the sooner my heart and the people under my control will be at ease." How could Li Shimin not be in a hurry? He was just short of burning down the house now. He knew his own situation. He knew how many soldiers he had. These people still didn't know if the Turks had any backup plans. Besides, if you hide in the mountains all day and talk your mouth off, how could you know what other people were thinking? It was better to get the hard goods as soon as possible so that he could be at ease. Li Shimin also knew that he couldn't push him too hard. Otherwise, this kid would definitely not do it. He sighed and said, "Sigh, thinking about that treasured sword. I can't forget it even now. However, this thing is still in Tubo for the time being and can't be transported back." "Enough. I'll do it, okay?" Zhang Feng was finally hung up by Li Shimin. It was simply touching the pot that didn't boil. Actually, it wasn't that difficult to make this gun. After all, he was also a gun enthusiast. He had seen these things and information on how to assemble guns and other things when he was in university. There was everything in the library. The difficulty was in the seamless steel pipe. This thing was really difficult. As long as this thing was created, then everything would be fine. After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng said, I can do it, but it will take at least a month to produce something. You also know that the things on the mountain are very important. I can't tinker with those things all day long. If you can wait, then find some skilled blacksmiths and a guy with all the materials and equipment to move to the mountain. Don't worry, these are all minor issues. Li Shimin patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and sat down with satisfaction. Feng Zi, I know your ability. As for the blacksmiths, I will naturally hire the best, but you have to keep this matter in mind. This is money. Once you make it and I present it to Lord Zhangsun, you will be rich. Now that the border is not peaceful, if this thing can be used in the army, won't you become a great hero of the Tang dynasty? When the time comes, won't it be easy for you to be promoted to nobility? Don't you want to be an official in the court? When the time comes and the emperor summons you, won't you? Li Shimin became more and more excited as he spoke. Zhang Feng's interest was piqued. He couldn't help but imagine. Yes, how could I forget about this? If the emperor, then I will be able to be an official in the court soon, won't I? However, thinking about it, it was still very good. Zhang Feng still had self-awareness about this. If he could meet with Li Shimin, he would have come to find him a long time ago. Li Shimin's character of opening up avenues of communication and accepting talents. As for the delay until now, he also knew that the emperor didn't come because of Guanlong's influence in the court. His influence in the court was still very strong. If he went, they didn't dare to do it openly. But who could guarantee that they would do it secretly? Therefore, with this thought, Zhang Feng couldn't help but want to get the gun out. Not for anything else, but if he could make a gun, then wouldn't he be able to make a pistol after a period of training? When the time came, he would get 2 concealed pistols and a bulletproof vest. What was there to be afraid of? He would just go straight to the point. When the time came, it would be time to settle the score. As long as he gave the emperor a bulletproof vest or a bulletproof vest and a pistol when he entered the court, even if he didn't dare to think about it, he should at least be able to become the Grand Secretary, right? Who would dare to oppose? Lao Tzu shot him dead. Who would know that it was Lao Tzu who did it? At this moment, Zhang Feng couldn't sit still and asked, Lao Li, immediately go down the mountain and find me the best blacksmith. No matter how good his blacksmithing skills are, his forging and smelting skills must be good. Seeing Zhang Feng like this, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel relieved. This time, he finally dragged Zhang Feng into the water. As long as this kid set his mind on it, no matter how they changed these battles, they couldn't stop him. The Tang dynasty would definitely win. Okay. I'll do it right away. By the way, do you need anything? For example, oars or something like that. Hearing Li Shimin's words, Zhang Feng patted his head and hurriedly wrote down a list of materials on a piece of paper. He handed it to Li Shimin and asked, These materials can be delivered later, but the smelting furnace must be delivered first. As for the oars, just give me some scrap iron. Li Shimin was stunned. Scrap iron? Are you sure? Chapter 744. Li Shimin hurriedly left. He was puzzled. He could not understand why Zhang Feng needed to smelt the firearms. However, he could guess that the materials used to smelt the invincible spear would be used. However, why did he need iron? Moreover, it was scrap iron? After Li Shimin left, Zhang Feng instantly fell into deep thought. Regarding this kind of smelting technique, especially the method of smelting steel, many different methods instantly appeared in Zhang Feng's mind. However, he rejected many of them. Although there were many methods, many of the materials could not be realized in this era. However, in the end, Zhang Feng thought of an indigenous method of smelting steel. It seemed that it could really be done in this era for him. Zhang Feng could not help but hurriedly record down the process according to the things he remembered in his mind. Dean, something has happened. Something big has happened. However, after an unknown period of time, Gao Can's voice urgently sounded from outside the room. In an instant, Zhang Feng's brush trembled and the brush instantly pierced the paper. Upon hearing this, Zhang Feng's expression changed. He angrily opened the door and asked, What happened? The paper mill. The paper mill is out. It's white, like snow. Gao Can seemed very agitated. He was so agitated that he could not even speak properly. His face had turned dark purple. Upon hearing this, Zhang Feng was stunned and instantly became ecstatic. Go, 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 let's go to the paper mill immediately. Zhang Feng did not care about anything else. He hurriedly passed Gao Can and ran away. When Zhang Feng ran away, the patrolling Wei Shuyu, Li Changqian, and Du Go could not help but stare at Zhang Feng. When the emperor went in and came out, they had all watched with their own eyes and did not dare to ask. They were even thinking about when to ask Fengzi about what the two of them had talked about. But he didn't expect that this big black guy would send Fengzi down the mountain in a hurry. The three of them couldn't help but be shocked. They put down the work in their hands and hurriedly ran down the mountain. The old village chief, who was paying attention to Zhang Feng's door in the kitchen, saw this and angrily stomped his feet and roared. Bad news, Fengzi was tricked by bad people again. Quick, all of you, follow him and see. You, Zhu Zi's father, carry me on your back. I'll go take a look too. Remember to copy your weapons. All right. When everyone heard this, they didn't dare to delay any longer. They hurriedly threw down the fragrant braised meat that was boiling in the pot and ran away with the porridge, leaving behind a group of women and children who were pointing at their backs and muttering. Oh, look at Fengzi, the silly boy. If I were a man, I would tie his head to my leg. He is a good person, but isn't this too much? Serves him right for being sold off and still helping count the money. Isn't that so? This silly kid, not only did he give away 20,000 dawn of grain for free, he even gave them money? What kind of logic is this? Logically speaking, these ingrates are really too much. They have already eaten for so long, yet they still haven't left and are pestering us on the mountain. Zhang Feng didn't know about these matters. If he knew, he would just chuckle. With the women's vision, how could they see Zhang Feng's plan? Just as everyone was discussing, Zhang Feng rode down Shao Mountain on his mule and killed his way to the front of the papermaking workshop in the mountain valley. At this time, even before he entered the papermaking workshop, he could see a field of white things that covered the entire flat ground in front of the papermaking workshop. At the edge of the bamboo garden, someone had set up densely packed scaffolding. Pieces of paper swayed in the wind, showing off their unique profoundness. At this time, everyone in the workshop had stopped working. Everyone looked at the pieces of white paper as if they were treasures. Even if a worm was attracted by this unfamiliar white color, it would be chased and beaten to death by these fellows. This was even more affectionate than their own sons. Chen Wanli was like a local tycoon. He sat at the entrance of the courtyard with a broom in his hand like a general. Every time he passed by someone, he would sweep that person's body. He would only allow people to touch those papers after he had swept away all the fleas in that person's hair. Who didn't know how precious paper was if they could make paper? Not to mention this kind of thing that was more precious than rice paper. Chen Wanli treasured it even more than his own life. And at this time, a mule's neighing instantly attracted everyone's attention. Other than their dean, there was no one else who could ride a mule. On this mountain, there was an unwritten rule that the dean did not know how to ride a horse. Therefore, the craftsman made a large frame for him and placed it on a docile mule, just like Zhang Feng's armchair. Other than him, no one else was allowed to ride the mule. Why? Because it was easy to recognize. When they saw Zhang Feng coming, everyone hurriedly stood at the entrance of the papermaking workshop as if they were waiting for an inspection. They stared at Zhang Feng with red eyes. Jumping off the mule, Zhang Feng didn't have time to chat with Chen Wanli and hurriedly wanted to see his treasure. However, he was stopped by Chen Wanli. Wait, clean yourself first before you go in. Chapter 745. Zhang Feng was speechless. He could only roll his eyes and let Chen Wanli do as he pleased. However, Chen Wanli wanted to remove Zhang Feng's hairpin, which made Zhang Feng furious. Is there a need for this? Isn't it just a few pieces of lousy paper? Who gave you this rule? You even dare to be Lao Tzu? Chen Wanli's face turned red. However, he still argued, Dean, you don't know. This paper. Stop nagging me. If you continue nagging, do you believe that I will make you pick up feces right now? You're revolting. Abolish this rule for me, but you still have to pay attention to hygiene. Those who enter this place must be neatly dressed, clean, and leave no traces on their hands before they can enter. Do you all remember that? Who the F***ck dares to dig their nose for raw paper? If I find out, I'll throw them off the mountain. Everyone's expression changed drastically when they heard that. They hurriedly raised their hands for Zhang Feng to check. However, how could Zhang Feng care about that? He picked up a piece of paper, looked at it carefully, and smelled it. Not bad. This was the smell. This was the color. The paper was very soft. It was not as tall and straight as the paper of the future. This was because of the fiber. Paper without fiber was so soft. However, this was not important. When the paper was placed under the sun, it did not have the fluffy feeling. It blended perfectly with the birch tree's resin. This was very good. However, the only thing lacking in beauty was that there was no bleaching powder. There was no way to bleach it. There were still some tiny black spots on the paper, as well as some things that belonged to the plants. Zhang Feng pointed at the black spots and those things on the paper. He then described them to Qian Wanli in detail. This thing, I won't say anything else. Take a look. What is this thing? I've told you before that this thing must be well protected. Don't let it be contaminated with dust. Remember that when this pulp enters the final stage of forming, you must use the best gauze to filter out the impurities. Otherwise, this thing can't even be sold at the price of straw paper, let alone compare with rice paper. We are all members of the Academy. We will need and use these things in the future. Think about it. If you become rich in the future and your calligraphy is passed down, your descendants will point at the black spot on the paper and ask, "Isn't this paper made by you? Why are there these things on it?" I'm asking you, aren't you ashamed? Do you still want the face of White Deer College? Under Zhang Feng's scolding, everyone's eyes turned red and they lowered their heads. Some of them even pinched the ears of the people around them and scolded them. Qian Wanli was so anxious that he almost cried. When Zhang Feng saw that the scolding was about done, he patted Qian Wanli's shoulder and said, "However, it's your credit to be able to make paper in 3 days. After all, this is your first time. I won't punish you this time, but you must remember that the paper has to be as clean as possible, just like people. This is also the principle of White Deer College. People don't need to be smart, but they must be clean. This paper is the same, understand? Damn! Fengzi, you're awesome." However, the reply to Zhang Feng was a sentence that spoiled the mood. Zhang Feng instantly glared at Chang Chumo. Chang Chumo scratched his head embarrassedly and pointed behind him. "If you want to throw a tantrum, look for this old the old village chief." Ha ha ha. As they spoke, Chang Chumo and the others walked around the paper-making workshop with their arms around each other's shoulders. That King Dugo even tried to stuff paper into his arms in front of everyone. "Du De Bing, if you dare to steal again, Lao Tzu will kill you." Zhang Feng couldn't bear to watch any longer. He roared at the top of his lungs. As expected, the old village chief, who was trembling as he stared at the paper and his eyes were about to pop out, suddenly leaned on his walking stick and roared, "Which shameless person dares to steal? Find the person from Tonghui workshop and drown him in a pig cage." Dugo's expression changed drastically. He dared to act arrogantly in front of Zhang Feng, but in front of these uncouth people he was afraid. If these people were to cause trouble, even the government wouldn't be able to do anything to them. Dugo could only embarrassedly throw the paper out before the people from Tonghui workshop arrived. Only then did they give up. The old village chief personally picked up the paper that Dugo threw on the ground. His whole body was trembling. "Evil creature, you've sinned." Old man remembers that rice paper costs 1,000 copper coins per caddy. "How much is this?" As he spoke, the old village head's wrinkled fingers picked up the paper and weighed it in his hand. "This is at least 2 or 3 taels. Kid, come, pay up. This belongs to Tong Huifang. If you don't pay up today, I will drag you to the authorities." A few hundred copper coins. It may not be much in your eyes, but you know, in the eyes of poor people like us, this is a year's harvest. Are you going to waste it? Dugo and the other's eyes bulged. "No way, this belongs to Feng Zi, right? We were just joking with Feng Zi. You all know that Feng Zi and I are brothers." "What do I know? I only know that brothers should settle accounts clearly. Feng Zi is still young. If he is fooled by you all like this, he will get into trouble sooner or later. Today, I will use my status as the village chief of Tonghui Workshop to announce that I will temporarily help Feng Zi manage everything on Shao Mountain. Don't even think about cheating Feng Zi of a single copper coin. Chapter 746. Zhang Feng did not expect this either. He hurriedly said, "Old village chief, please take a rest. This is nothing. Isn't it just a piece of paper? I'm just opening." "Opening what?" The old village chief glared and used his walking stick to poke Zhang Feng's chest a few times. As he poked, he said, "See for yourself. Do you want me to find the old Shotsai to look after you now? Or do you want us to gather the money and bring the young lady of the Zhang family up the mountain? Or do you want us to look after the house for you for the time being? This prodigal son of a bitch. How can you throw away something that costs a few hundred copper coins just like that? Even if the heavenly King Lao Tzu comes today, you can't not pay up." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. Li Chengqian, Wei Shuyu and the others were also dumbfounded. It was fine when they were quarreling before, but what was this old man doing today? Cough, cough. "Old village chief, we definitely have to give you the money. This is a big pie wrong. But please don't lower yourself to our level. We don't know any better. Please bear with us. But we are discussing something important. Can you?" Li Chengqian showed his refined side and said a few words to the old man. Only then did the old village chief calm down. But looking at the yard full of paper, his turbid eyes were full of stars. This was all King money. How much money was this? "From today onwards, this paper mill belongs to Tong Hui Fong. Without our permission, no one is allowed to come in." Li Chengqian and the others were not the only ones who did not expect this. Even Zhang Feng did not expect this. The corner of his mouth twitched. He signaled Zhu Zi's father with his eyes and asked, "Old man, what's the matter?" Zhu Zi's father sighed and said, "Isn't this because of you? No one said anything when you opened an academy on this mountain. But you also realized that when you said you were going to open an academy, no one paid attention to you. Didn't you realize anything?" Zhang Feng's head shook like a rattledrum. How would he know this? "This is because you ruined an immortal. Look at what you're doing. What is this? This is something that only a prodigal would do. Have you ever dreamed that your family's immortal would crawl out of his grave and scold you?" "I want to." Zhang Feng shrugged. Zhu Zi's father continued, "Last time when you had diarrhea, we wanted to think of a way for you. Look at that wine, that meat, that..." Zhu Zi's father recounted every single one of the things that Zhang Feng had done as if he knew his family's treasures. It almost made Zhang Feng wonder if the usually honest and stoic Zhu Zi's father had been changed. Why did he start talking so much? "Look at what you've done. You've given away 20,000 dawn of grain for nothing. Even if you've been conferred a title, it's useless. Have you ever thought about it? If your family's foundation is gone, what will the academy rely on in the future? Look at your Baijiu, we all treated it like a treasure and hid it away. But that damn bastard old Li, he directly took away your family heirloom. Now you know why the old village chief went crazy. Why did he do that? He's afraid that your family's immortal will look for him at night. That's what we all mean. No matter what you do in the future, you have to go through us first. We'll be your housekeeper. Or I'll go down the mountain and carry Miss Zhang up for you. You choose." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. So it was like this. But Zhang Feng also wanted to slap himself. Why did he scare people last time? Now it's fine. "Old village chief, look at this matter." "Fine, then I'll have to trouble you to worry about me in the future. As the saying goes, having an elder in the family is like having a treasure. Zhang Feng's family passed away early, but today I have you as my family. It's God's blessing." Under the threat of the old village chief's marriage contract, Zhang Feng became more and more terrified. Wasn't it just a housekeeper? This was good. Otherwise, those damn fellows would try to trick him every time they came. It was impossible to guard against them. Now that he had the old village chief, after settling the old village chief's matter, Zhang Feng clapped his hands and said, "Everyone, come here. I'll announce something today. From today onwards, the old village chief has the right to decide the income and expenditure of the paper mill. No matter what expenditure it is, it has to be approved by him. You all understand?" Qian Wanli still hadn't reacted and nodded in a daze. Seeing that everyone agreed, the old village chief treasured the white paper and shouted, "God has opened his eyes." While trembling, he escorted everyone to the temple to burn incense. Only then did everyone take a deep breath. "Feng, are you really going to hand such a huge business to an outsider?" Li Chengqian was a little confused. Zhang Feng smiled as he looked at the old village chief. He shook his head and said, "No, they are my family. It's been a long time since I felt like home." Zhang Feng's eyes were a little moist. He waved his hand and said, "It's been hard on all of you today. Let's go and drink. There's enough wine and meat today." Chapter 747. In front of the barbecue stall at the entrance of the food factory, Zhang Feng drank one can of bamboo beer after another. He wanted to get drunk, but he didn't know what was wrong with the beer today. He just couldn't get drunk. In this foreign land, Zhang Feng suddenly felt the taste of home. That's right, it was the taste of home. Ever since he went to university, he had never heard his mother's nagging, his father's scolding, or his grandfather's concern. At this time, when he looked back, it turned out that the simple people in Tonghui Lane had already treated him like family. Every time something happened to him on the mountain or when he couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, he didn't know how many pairs of caring eyes stared at him in the dark. What was this? This was the care of a family. For the first time, Zhang Feng felt that his life was so complete. Lao Li and the others were Zhang Feng's brothers. They were also the first friends that Zhang Feng made when he was at his most helpless in the Tang dynasty. Later, Lao Li introduced him to a large number of friends and brothers. Later, he met Jing Shu at Yen Lai restaurant. What was this? This was a confidant. Later, he met the mysterious old scholar who cared for him like a grandfather. Later, he was willing to use his precious jade pendant as a betrothal gift and arranged a marriage for him. What was this? This was caring. At this time, Zhang Feng understood why these people were so anxious to arrange blind dates for him. It was because they felt that Zhang Feng was too lonely, and he drank a big mouthful of beer. Zhang Feng's eyes were wet. Li Chengqian and the others also saw that Zhang Feng was not right at this time. So, although everyone was drinking, no one dared to breathe loudly. Everyone looked at Zhang Feng worriedly. They also knew that Zhang Feng should be thinking of his home that had disappeared in the landslide. No matter who it was, they would feel lonely. Even they would sometimes feel lonely in the midst of the hustle and bustle. Humans had feelings. They would all feel lonely. They always saw Zhang Feng with a sinister smile on his face. Who knew if he would cry in the middle of the night? If you want to cry, just cry. Li Chengqian patted Zhang Feng's shoulder. Zhang Feng took a deep breath with reddened eyes and glared at the crowd. Who the F***ck said that Lao Tzu cried? Come, let's drink. Lao Tzu didn't cry. Lao Tzu is thinking about how to sell these papers. Zhang Feng's excuse, which didn't sound like an excuse, made everyone sigh helplessly. Li Chengqian bumped his bamboo tube against Zhang Feng's and asked, "Didn't you promise to give this paper to Mr. Bo Shi? Don't tell me you want to sell it?" "No." Zhang Feng smacked his lips and said, "There's something wrong with this paper. I won't give it to him for the time being." Chen Wanli, let me ask you. According to the improvement method I just mentioned, when will the second batch of paper be ready tomorrow? Chen Wanli stood up and bowed. If we rush the work tonight, we will be able to finish it by tomorrow noon or by the evening at the latest. And it's about 500 caddies. Good. Zhang Feng clapped his hands and said, "If you can finish 500 caddies before dark tomorrow, each of you will be rewarded with 100 copper coins." Everyone was overjoyed. They all stood up and thanked him. Li Chengqian hurriedly asked, "Then this batch of paper, are you planning to sell it? If you are selling it, I want to buy it." Li Chengqian knew very well what this paper meant. He wanted to be the first to own it, and then, however, Zhang Feng flatly rejected Li Chengqian. No, I have great use for this paper. It's not for sale. Not for sale. Chang Chumo and the others scratched their heads and looked at Zhang Feng curiously. Zhang Feng said, "You all know that this is how the previous products became popular, right? Momentum?" The few of them instantly understood. Yes, it's momentum. Right now, all the paper in the market is from the Ministry of Works. There are very few commoners who can afford paper, especially Shen paper, which is worth 1,000 copper coins. If we want our paper to be noticed, the first thing we have to do is to let people know that White Deer College has paper. And it's white paper which is better and cheaper than Shen paper. This is the only way to take advantage of the remaining popularity of the braised meat and raise the reputation of White Deer College in the hearts of the commoners. This time, it's the landowning households who can afford and need paper. Hearing this, Li Chengqian's eyes flashed with astonishment. He asked, "How much are you going to sell this paper for? You also know that those who can afford to use this thing are aristocratic households and those scholars. By literature, at least it's by literature." Zhang Feng raised a finger and said, "What? Only 100 copper coins?" Chang Chumo's loud voice instantly exclaimed. Not only did the people hear it, even the people at the entrance of the food factory turned to look. Zhang Feng glared at Chang Chumo and said, "Why don't you see how much this thing can be produced in a day? How much paper was produced today?" Qian Wanli hurriedly said, 300 caddies. We produced 300 caddies today. Zhang Feng said indifferently, "Yes, 300 caddies, and we can produce 500 caddies tomorrow. In the future, as long as the technology is mature, this workshop of 30 people can guarantee at least 500 caddies of paper every day. Think about it, what will happen if there's more paper? Everyone says that paper is expensive in Chang'an. Lao Tzu wants everyone to be able to afford paper. Lao Tzu wants to slap those self-proclaimed landowning households in the face. What about it?" Chapter 748. Crazy. Damn it. Feng Zi must be crazy. What a good paper. Others might not know the material of rice paper. However, Li Chengqian and the others knew that although the rice paper was coated with a layer of wax, it was still yellow and impure. It wasn't as pure as the white paper. But even so, not many people could afford to use it. On the one hand, it was because of the paper-making technique. On the other hand, the production was too small. The production of rice paper in Zhang Feng's day was more than that in Chang, and in a month. What did that mean? It was simply intolerable. And now, those aristocratic families valued their prestige based on their collection of books. Why? One book cost 1,000 tubes of money. How much money would it cost to be learned? Once the price of the paper was cheaper, the weight of these aristocratic families, wouldn't it become lighter? What would they do? This was simply something that only a lunatic would dare to do. But, for the 4 great devils of Chang and City, this was interesting enough. Lunatic, don't forget about us for such a fun thing. Tomorrow morning, I'll bring the paper to Chang and City and stir up trouble for him. Just tell him what kind of tricks you want to play. Leave the rest to us." Chang Chumo and the others were scrambling to do this thing. Qian Wanli and the others twitched their mouths and hurriedly distanced themselves from Chang Chumo and the others. It seemed that these people at this time had regained the prestige of the 4 great devils of Chang'an. But when Zhang Feng heard this, he really thought of an idea. He waved his hand and asked Qian Wanli to come over. Then the 7 of them gathered together and said, "I have an idea. Listen to me. I want to hear it too." Suddenly, there was a muffled sound. Zhang Feng could not help but be stunned for a moment before he remembered that there was still Gao Can standing at the side. He speechlessly waved his hand and pointed to a pot of braised pig head meat at the side. "Go get me some meat and wine. You can't go on this matter." "Oh!" Upon hearing this, Gao Can gave a muffled "oh." He sat by the side, ignoring the hostile gazes of the young students from the paper-making workshop. He hugged the pig's head meat and chewed on it. Zhang Feng heaved a sigh of relief. What a joke. If he were to let this guy go, in less than a quarter of an hour, the original words would be tricked out of him. Being too honest was sometimes a good thing, but sometimes it was a fatal existence. Let me tell you, this matter, In the afternoon in Chang, and although it was almost the beginning of autumn, it was still stuffy and hot. After lunch, the people who were bored out of their minds gathered by the river or under the big willow tree to talk about trivial matters. The most popular place, especially for the poor, was undoubtedly the tea house. Usually, for 1 copper coin, one could order a pot of tea, some snacks, and sit for an entire day. One could even listen to the storyteller talk from the south to the north. As for the poor, they had nothing to do. They just put their hands into their sleeves and squatted in a corner. If they met a familiar waiter, they could even get a bench to sit on. The free songs and the storyteller's saliva were their main sources of understanding the country's affairs. It was the same today. Everyone listened to the storyteller's story. If it was boring, everyone would stop and gossip. If it was exciting, everyone would praise each other. At this moment, after the storyteller finished his plain story, he slapped the wooden board and said, "The reason why I'm telling this story today is to broaden everyone's horizons. Everyone, take a look at what this is." As he spoke, the storyteller suddenly raised his voice. When he saw that everyone was looking at him, he took out a folded, white, square object from his inner shirt. In an instant, everyone's eyes were hooked. The storyteller dipped his finger on his lips and then carefully unfolded the snow-white object. In the next moment, under everyone's curious gaze, the storyteller unfolded the object that was the size of a table and asked mysteriously, "Everyone, take a guess. What is this?" Everyone couldn't help but be interested. Even the officials and nobles on the second floor occasionally poked their heads to take a look. Could this be a kind of cloth from the western regions? No, this doesn't look like cloth. What is this thing? Could it be paper? Nonsense. Have you ever seen paper that is white? And it's so thin. How does it look like paper? Then, Blind Lou, what is this thing? The storyteller stroked his beard. Although he was blind, his eyes, which were covered with white things, were still staring at the people on the second floor. Seeing that no one asked, he said calmly, "You may not believe it. Although this old man has an eye disease, this old man has seen rice paper before. But today, this old man saw this with a child in Tong Hui Fong." As he spoke, the storyteller raised the white object in his hand and then shouted excitedly, "What is this? You must have never seen it in your entire life. Today, this old man will show you what this is." As he spoke, the storyteller slowly grabbed the white object and gently tore it along one side. Poochie. Chapter 749. The storyteller hissed very, very slowly. It was almost as if he was tearing it bit by bit. At this moment, the people on the second floor could no longer sit still. Although Blind Sun had mentioned rice paper earlier, when he took out this thing now, many people couldn't help but have a strange thought in their hearts when they heard the sound. Could it be that this was paper? Finally, more and more people on the second floor stuck their heads out of the railing and watched the storyteller tear things apart. "Blind Sun, is the thing in your hand paper?" Finally, a person on the second floor asked indifferently. When the storyteller heard this, he heaved a deep sigh of relief and immediately stopped tearing. He cupped his fists in the direction of the person who spoke and said, "This master is right. This is paper." "What? Impossible! How can paper be so thin? So white? Nonsense, it's simply nonsense. Blind Sun, could it be that you're so old that you can't even recognize paper? By the way, you're blind. How would you know what paper is?" The storyteller couldn't sit still anymore. He shouted coldly, "Master, you might have misunderstood me. This old man's ancestors were all important officials in the imperial court for 3 generations. In terms of family background, I'm afraid you're not as good as me." "You," the storyteller said proudly. Although this old man suffered from an eye disease at the age of 30 and had no choice but to leave home to make a living, why would you be here today to listen to this old man talk about important matters? If you don't believe me, you can come and verify it. If I'm lying, I'll bang my head against the wall and die here today." Blind Sun's voice was very loud. Those who could come here, or rather, those who were regular customers, more or less knew some things. Blind Sun's background was really not simple. If he wasn't blind, he would have cut off contact with his family and wandered alone in order not to affect the Sun family's reputation. The people on the second floor just now seemed to have touched Blind Sun's reverse scale, which was why Blind Sun was so agitated. When Blind Sun's voice fell, the entire tea house instantly fell into a dead silence. Cough, cough. I can verify what Elder Sun said. If anyone doesn't believe me, you can come upstairs and argue with me. And at this moment, on the highest floor of the tea house, a crisp female voice that could captivate one's soul suddenly sounded. Regardless of whether it was the people on the second floor or the people on the first floor, when they heard this, everyone instantly stood up regardless of what they were doing. They cupped their fists and bowed from the third floor. There was no other way. This person's identity was even more terrifying. Everyone only knew that this woman came from the palace, but no one knew her name or her identity. The only thing that made this place famous was that there was once a second-rank official who came here to cause a ruckus. In the end, his legs were broken and he was dragged out. The next day, when everyone thought that this tea house was going to be in trouble, they were shocked to find that the second-rank official and his family of 27 people were all kneeling in front of the tea house to beg for forgiveness. Thus, the reputation of the tea house instantly spread throughout Chang'an City. Some said that the owner of the tea house was Princess Xiaoning. Some people even said that this tea house belonged to the Empress. Others said that it belonged to the Crown Prince. In any case, there were all kinds of rumors. In short, the owner of the tea house did not say anything. No one dared to cause trouble again. Do you think the 4 great demon kings of Chang'an City are powerful? However, such powerful people did not even enter the tea house. What did that mean? If there was such a mysterious place in other places, the 4 great demon kings would not let it go if they did not flatten it and find out what was going on. But here, every time they would take a detour as if they were thin air. What did that mean? At this moment, everyone saw that the mysterious woman on the third floor had spoken. How could they doubt her? Blind Sun cupped his fists at the woman on the third floor. Then, he pointed at the paper in his hand and tore it into strips with a ruler. Then, he rolled them into balls and threw them out. No one understood what he was doing. However, they still picked up the balls. However, when they held them in their hands, they could not help but be in an uproar. This is paper. It's paper. Oh my God. It's really paper. Where did this paper come from? Blind Sun, this paper. When everyone excitedly unfolded the paper balls and looked at the storytelling table, they saw that Blind Sun had already disappeared without a trace. The people on the second floor could not sit still anymore. They urged the servants to grab some paper and bring it up. In the next moment, the quiet second floor suddenly burst into a burst of exclamations. Paper. That's really paper. How can there be such paper in this world? Oh my God. Could it really be from Tubo? No. Did you notice the place that Blind Sun mentioned just now? What place? At this moment, not only the people on the second floor, but also the people on the first floor held their breaths. After a moment of silence, that person said word by word, Tong Hui Fong. In an instant, everyone understood. That's right. Blind Sun seemed to have mentioned Tong Hui Fong just now, and he said that he got it from 2 children? This? Let's go. Let's go and take a look. Let's go. Chapter 750. The market in Tong Hui Fong was very empty. Compared to other markets, it was as if there was no one there at all. Not to mention the vendors, there were not even many children playing here. Everyone knew that the people in Tong Hui Fong had gone to Shao Mountain to make a fortune. Therefore, why would these profit-seeking businessmen come here? But today, Tong Hui Fong was very popular. No one knew who had suddenly appeared in Tong Hui Lane with a piece of paper that no one had ever seen before. Moreover, it spread rapidly in Chang'an City like a single spark starting a prairie fire. At first, people could see some of these papers in Finger Tea House and Tavern. But after a while, some women and children appeared on the streets of Tong Hui Fong. They carried bamboo baskets in their hands and gave the people they saw a piece of white paper. Paper was very rare. After all, ordinary people would not have seen this kind of thing before. Even if it was 100 copper coins per caddy, they would rarely use it, let alone 1,000 copper coins per caddy. But today, something strange happened. No one knew where this person came from, but he actually gave away a kind of white paper that no one had ever seen before. At first, everyone thought that it was a good thing from the western region. But slowly, they realized that on the bottom right corner of the paper, there were 4 small characters. White Deer College. When they saw these words, everyone was stunned. They were all stunned. Could it be that these white papers were made by the people from White Deer College? Everyone had this suspicion in their hearts. The women and children who gave out the paper ignored them and continued to walk along Tong Hui Fong to the Eastern Market. Come, come, come. Don't miss this chance. Where can you find good white paper? Come and take a look, all of you. Do you want free white paper? More and more people gathered as the shouts rang out. Nyo Weili from the Chong and Yamen also received a piece of white paper. He frowned as he stared at the small characters of White Deer College and muttered, "Could it be that this paper was made by Lord Zhang?" Ever since Zhang Feng had come, Nyo Weili had been the focus of everyone's attention on Zhang Feng. Couldn't be helped. Every inch of land in Chong and city was worth its weight in gold. Maybe you could meet someone you couldn't afford to offend. Of course, this Zhang Feng was someone Nyo Weili couldn't afford to offend. After Zhang Feng went to Mount Shao, Nyo Weili paid special attention to his every move. Every time something happened from Shao Mountain, Nyo Weili would have the illusion that the sky was falling and the earth was sinking. If it were anyone else, they would have already been beheaded by the authorities. However, on the second day, a lot of braised meat appeared in Chong and city. Moreover, it was pork. This kind of braised meat did not have a fishy smell. Instead, it was soft, glutinous, fragrant, and delicious, making people unable to stop eating. After that, the great scholars came to visit, the 3 generals came together, and the properties of those nobles in Chong and city were all replaced by this braised meat shop. Every time Nyo Weili heard about it, his heart would tremble a little. But now, this Lord Zhang actually fiddled with this thing again and again in such a short time. What is he trying to do? Can't he let people live in peace? Nyo Weili suddenly felt that he couldn't stay in the county government of Chong and city anymore. Every 2 or 3 days, Lord Zhang would give him a wave of unexpected things. How can he let people live in peace? Nyo Weili gently rubbed the paper on his face. Then he wanted to write something. But after thinking about it, he finally changed to the smallest pen and wrote Nyo Weili's name on the corner of the white paper. Nyo Weili couldn't sit still after comparing it with the previous rice paper. Whether it was the ability of the paper to absorb ink or something else, it was 100 times better than rice paper. After writing on rice paper, it would take at least 10 minutes to dry it. But what about this white paper? It would only take a few breaths of time to completely dry it. Guards! Guards! Send someone here! In Nyo Weili's hurried shout, the guards stumbled into Nyo Weili's bedroom. Sir, what's the matter? Quickly go and get all the paper from the people on the street who give this kind of paper to me. If there's no other way, buy their paper with money. The guards couldn't help but look bitter when they heard this. He took out a few neatly folded pieces of paper from his arms and said, "Sir, I've asked around. Those papers, no matter how much money you give them, they won't sell them." What? They won't sell them? How can there be idiots in this world who don't want to make money? Nyo Weili was confused. The guard said even more bitterly, "Sir, you don't know. Even if the teachers from the Imperial College came in person, those pedantic women wouldn't sell them at all." There was such a saying? What was this for? Such good paper. Suddenly, Nyo Weili seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly took off his official robe and asked hurriedly, "How many of those people sent the paper? Where are they now?" I'm not sure. At first, there were only a dozen people. But now, they're basically everywhere in Chong and city. Moreover, there are dozens of people lining up at the entrance of Mingda Anhua Chixia in Chong and city. They're all sent to people who enter and leave the city. Now, carriages and horses can't pass through the city gate. Chapter 751. Nyo Weili almost fainted when he heard that. Regarding this matter, he was certain that this young marquis must have made a move. Otherwise, he would not have dared to do such a foolish thing. How could he give away such good paper just like that? If his head wasn't clamped by a door, then he must have been provoked. Otherwise, he absolutely wouldn't do such a thing. Go, go, go. What are you waiting for? Go to the city gates. Nyo Whaley could not sit still any longer. He rushed out of the residence. The group of Yamen runners also hurriedly ran out. Each of them held a piece of paper in their hands as if it were a treasure. Don't underestimate the paper in their hands, which was only the size of a book. If they met someone who needed it, this piece of paper could be exchanged for a day's worth of food. That was scary enough. They also wanted to follow Nyo Whaley to take a look. It would be best if they could get some benefits at the same time. At this moment, the commotion at the city gates was even worse than the market. Everyone was talking about their heads and tiptoeing as they looked at the city gates. Some of them had snatched a piece of paper and were happily showing it off. The rest were even more anxious. They had no choice. There was only so much paper, but there were so many people. Although many of them were there to join in the fun and to see who was the person who dared to do such a wasteful thing, they did not dare to do it. At this moment, a carriage with a white veil carved with cloud patterns slowly appeared on the suspension bridge of the illustrious Virtue Gate. When the carriage crossed the moat, it could not move. In front of the carriage were countless people who had gambled. Even the merchants left one person behind to look after the carriage. The rest of them all rushed into the city gates, as if something terrible had happened in the city. Tang, what's going on in front? Why is it so noisy at the gate? In the carriage, Ouyang Soon asked calmly. The boy beside the carriage tiptoed to take a look and said, I don't know, but something seems to have happened. Let me go and take a look. This is Mr. Ouyang's carriage? At this moment, the guards at the city gate finally noticed the unusual carriage and cried out in surprise. In an instant, everyone who heard this name shuddered. The merchants at the outermost circle hurriedly turned around and made way. They even bowed and saluted. What's going on? Why is it so noisy? The boy imitated Ouyang Soon's tone and pointed at the guard who was taller than him. The city gate guard who was questioned hurriedly said, I don't know what happened today. Some women suddenly appeared in the city. They were holding a kind of white paper that had never been seen before. They gave it to everyone they saw. Now, these people have gathered at the city gate. We can't drive them away. More and more people are coming to Chang'an City after hearing the news. The guard hurriedly explained the matter from the beginning to the end. The boy looked at him suspiciously and pointed to an old merchant who was kneeling beside him, who was old enough to be his grandfather, and asked, Tell me, is what he said true? Replying to little brother, It's true, it's true. Look, these are the 2 pieces of paper that I just got. If you need it, I can give one to Mr. Ouyang. Before he finished speaking, the boy impatiently took the 2 pieces of paper from his hand. When the boy saw the paper, he couldn't help but be surprised. He didn't dare to be careless and hurriedly handed the paper into the sedan. In the sedan, Ouyang Soon squinted his eyes and waved his folding fan. However, all the sounds outside still reached his ears. White paper, or a group of women giving people away. Preposterous. Doesn't that mean that scholars like us are not even as good as those women and children? Ouyang Soon was angry. What is this? It's not a crime to be rich, but you don't have to use the reputation of all scholars and treasures to exaggerate your attitude of being a nouveau riche, right? White paper. Ouyang Soon took the white paper from the boy, his heart full of disdain. However, the moment the white paper touched his hand, Ouyang Soon's expression changed. He hurriedly unfolded the white paper and looked at it carefully with his turbid eyes. The paper was soft and didn't have the hardness of Shen paper, but it was very soft, like silk. It was thin as a cicada's wing. When placed on the curtain of the sedan, it could faintly shine through. What kind of paper is this? The old man had lived for dozens of years. Why hadn't he heard of this kind of white paper before? Who was the one who did this? Why is it so white? When Ouyang Soon came back to his senses with a series of questions, he couldn't help but be furious. Such good paper was actually being fought over by these commoners like a market? Spoiled? Even he, a great scholar, didn't dare to use Shen paper casually. This thing was more precious than his life. He would only use it as a last resort. However, at this moment, when Ouyang Sun lifted the curtain of the sedan, what did he see? Pairs of sweaty hands were casually dirtying the white paper. Furthermore, someone was actually rubbing it on his dirty face. Ouyang Sun's vision turned black and he almost fainted. Go, go, go! Quickly enter the palace. Boy! Immediately, enter the palace. I want to report to the emperor. Chapter 752. In the imperial study, Li Shimin, Wei Zheng, and the others were discussing something around a sand tray. At this moment, Xiao Gizi knocked on the door of the imperial study with a strange look on his face. Your Majesty, Mr. Ouyang requests an audience. Li Shimin and the others were stunned. Mr. Xinbin is back? Did he come back for Fengzi? Li Shimin muttered to himself in surprise. Summon him! As he spoke, Li Shimin glanced at the sand tray. Don't worry about other things for now. We just need to create momentum at the front line and create the impression that we are going to do something big. Everyone must be delayed until Fengzi's firearms are produced. Yu Qigong said, Your Majesty, I'm afraid that something unexpected will happen if we surround them without attacking. Today, General Nyojinda has returned from Tongguan Fortress to Chang. Your Majesty, We'll talk about this later. Come with me to meet Mr. Xinbin first. Li Shimin was in a good mood. The situation at the border had basically stabilized, and the moment Zhang Feng brought out the whatever gun, it would be the day the Tang army would launch a general attack on India from Chotzi. However, once the Tang dynasty mobilized a large number of military forces to Chotzi city, the people of India would definitely know. Therefore, they would still stubbornly push the front line forward to Jinla. As long as he was not stupid, he would definitely know the purpose of the Tang army. Li Shimin was not stupid. In fact, he was also a genius at military strategy. When Zhang Feng decided to focus on Chotzi city, Li Shimin and the others had thought of many things. Attacking India was secondary. If they could not defeat them, they would not attack the Turks. It was just a test. They would use the hundreds of thousands of people from the Tang dynasty to test the Turks. If they were not, the war would naturally stop. If they were not, it would take at least 10 days for reinforcements to come back from Jinla and Tubo. These 10 days were just the time Zhang Feng needed. Li Shimin was confident that he would be able to take control of the battle if he only needed 1,000 of them. Just as Li Shimin sat down on the dragon throne, a furious Ouyang Sun entered the imperial study. The moment he entered, Ouyang Sun's appearance gave everyone a fright. Old man greets your majesty. Ouyang Sun cupped his fists, still fuming. Li Shimin didn't dare to be careless and hurriedly asked, What happened to Mr. Xinbin? Today, the old man was invited by brother Bo Shi to visit his residence as a guest. However, on the way, he encountered a matter that caused the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the people. Therefore, the purpose of the old man entering the palace today is to lodge a complaint against the emperor. Li Shimin couldn't help but smile. Ouyang Sun had been recuperating in Luoyang all these years. On one hand, it was because he was old and Li Shimin wanted him to recuperate. On the other hand, it was mainly because of the problems in the eastern capital. At this time, he was preparing for the matters in the eastern capital. Ouyang Sun happened to be in the Hongwen Guan in Luoyang so he could take care of him. The matters in the eastern capital had been built since the Sui dynasty. On the one hand, Emperor Yang of Sui wanted to use the waterway to facilitate military operations from the south to the north. It was also at that time that the name of the eastern capital became another name for Luoyang. Some people even jokingly called Chang and the western capital. Li Shimin naturally knew why he could come back at this time. Mr. Xinben, you came back just in time. Later I will go with you to Mount Shao. I believe that it will naturally relieve the anger in your heart. Ouyang Sun knew that Li Shimin misunderstood. He thought that Zhang Feng was angry because of the 300,000 pigs that went up the mountain last time. Of course, he was very angry at that time. However, after he tasted the braised meat sent by Yushernan and read Yushernan's document, he only felt deep shock and mystery in his heart. How could he still be angry? Who would dare to be so considerate of the people? Ouyang Sun cupped his hands and said, Old man will naturally go to Mount Shao with your majesty. At this time, Ouyang Sun's face became serious and he said bluntly, "Your Majesty, do you still remember why your predecessor died 2 generations ago? Your Majesty, you may not know about the system, but Master Feng, Master Wei, and Master Du, you should have seen the extravagance of Emperor Yang of Sui, right? He said that silk and brocade wrapped around trees and laid silk and satin on the road. You all know these. Have you forgotten all these things in the past? Your Majesty, don't you remember the lessons of the past?" Speaking of this, he bluntly took out a piece of white paper from his sleeve and slapped it on Li Shimin's table. He said righteously. But when old man came back to the capital, he saw that today's Chong and was no different from the time when Emperor Yang of Sui died. This year there were disasters one after another. Your Majesty should be devoted to the people. However, in Chang'an City, there was someone who casually let a few women throw this kind of white paper, which is more precious than rice paper, on the street. There was even someone who casually threw it away like a pair of worn-out shoes. Who is it? Who dares to be so extravagant and casually throw this paper that is worth thousands of gold? It's as if it's free. Old man hasn't been in Chang'an for a long time. Has Chang'an become so extravagant and wasteful? Your Majesty, today old man wants to sue 3 people. Chapter 753. Li Shimin and the others looked at each other. But in the end, everyone's eyes involuntarily landed on the piece of white paper on the table. The paper was very white. It was so white that everyone wanted to see what material it was made of. However, Li Shimin was stunned by Ouyang Sun's words. He hurriedly picked up the paper and was instantly shocked. He held the paper in his hand and felt the texture of the paper. He couldn't help but say, "This paper should be very expensive, right?" Li Shimin was a little envious. This thing was countless times better than the paper he usually used as tributes. More importantly, this paper was simply indescribable. Even he didn't dare to use Shen paper recklessly. Only when he needed to write an imperial edict would he write it down on the paper and copy it onto the Shen paper. What did this mean? Expensive. Even if he was the emperor, he couldn't bear to waste a piece of Shen paper. However, compared to the Shen paper, Li Shimin had a feeling that the Shen paper was like a child in the marketplace, dirty and dark. However, this piece of white paper was like him, noble and mysterious. Li Shimin slowly unfolded the paper. However, just as he was about to ask Ouyang Sun who he was going to sue, he suddenly saw the bottom right corner of the paper from the corner of his eye. On the top right corner, there were 10 small characters. They were very small, about the size of green beans. The ink was very faint. If one didn't pay attention, they wouldn't notice it at first glance. More importantly, at this moment, when Li Shimin saw these inconspicuous words, it was as if a heavy hammer had struck his heart. White Deer College. Which bastard secretly came up with this again? Other than Zhang Feng, Li Shimin couldn't imagine a second person who could make this thing. More importantly, it was using such a familiar method. It was difficult for Li Shimin not to be suspicious. Moreover, there was a certificate of White Deer College on the paper. Damn it! With such a good thing, why didn't these little fellows give it to me immediately? Why didn't they give him a heads up? He should be punished. After confirming that this thing was created by Zhang Feng, Li Shimin's heart could not help but calm down. Seeing Ouyang Sun like this, he hurriedly got up and invited Ouyang Sun to sit down before asking, "Mr. Xinbin, do you know where this paper came from?" Ouyang Sun was stunned. He was so excited that he forgot to ask about the origin of the paper. At this moment, he was so anxious that he wanted to leave. Li Shimin hurriedly pulled Ouyang Sun back under the astonished gazes of Wei Zhang and the others. "Could it be that your Majesty knows where this paper came from? Tell me, who is it that dares to be so extravagant and wasteful? The old man will definitely ask his disciples to pay him a visit every day." Li Shimin's mouth twitched when he heard this. "Mr. Xinbin, don't be impatient. Listen to me slowly. Mr. Xinbin, do you know that there is a newly built academy outside Chang'an City?" Ouyang Sun was stunned when he heard this. "Your Majesty, are you talking about White Deer College?" "Yes." Wei Zhang and the others were stunned when they heard this. Could it be that this thing was created by that fellow again? They could not help but rush forward to take a look at the paper. Instantly, they could not remain calm. This really was the work of this fellow. However, when did this happen? Why did they not receive any information about it? However, it was a treasure. This time, this brat had really come up with a good treasure. Ouyang Soon seemed to have thought of something. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "Could it be? This paper came from that academy?" As he spoke, Ouyang Soon stood up and picked up the paper to take a closer look at the place where everyone else was looking. He really did find a few small characters from White Deer College. Ouyang Soon's expression couldn't help but change. Li Shimin took the opportunity to say, "Mr. Shinbin, you may not know this, but this academy can be considered my property. My friend Zhang Feng and I are best friends. I won't talk about what happened before. When the time comes, Mr. Bo Shi will definitely explain it in more detail than me. Mr. Shinbin has not been in Chang'an for a long time. I am not very clear about the current situation in the imperial court. Moreover, I did not expect this fellow to do this today. However, I think everything will be clear when you all go up the mountain." Ouyang Soon could not help but widen his eyes. Even the white beard on his chin was trembling. When he heard Li Shimin's words, he could not help but turn pale with fright. "Your Majesty is the father of all. How can you be brothers with common people? This must not be done." In his heart, the emperor should be a high and mighty existence. Even if he wanted to make friends, he should make friends with people from aristocratic families. How could he make friends with those common ruffians? In his heart, when Li Shimin spoke of brothers, he could not help but interpret it as illegitimate children. Ouyang Soon could not help but feel more and more anxious. He said worriedly, "Your Majesty should stop this behavior as soon as possible. Also, Mr. Feng, Mr. Wei, as officials, you should know how to live off the emperor's salary and worry about the emperor's worries. You? How can we?" When Li Shimin heard this, he smiled faintly and said, "Mr. Shinbin may not know this, but everyone here is brothers with that fellow." Chapter 754. Ouyang Soon couldn't understand. First, Li Shimin came to them with 3 poems to inscribe on the board of Chang and University. Then, for the first time, he heard that Zhang Feng was looking for someone. Then, because of Zhang Feng's talent, Yu Shinan and the others recommended him to be a great Confucian scholar. But then, Zhang Feng's name gradually became more and more well-known in the circle. He thought that the emperor had found a talent. Until Yu Shinan came to Chang and several times to invite him and the others to teach on Shao Mountain. Only then did Ouyang Soon slowly look at Zhang Feng as if he was looking at a junior. Especially his teaching philosophy and his generosity to save the people in times of danger. He also controlled the food price in Chang'an. Then he returned to Chang'an. But he encountered the 300,000 pigs on the mountain. Until now, just what kind of magic did Zhang Feng have to make so many people revolve around him? At this moment, not only Ouyang Soon, even Li Shimin didn't know how to deal with this matter today. This kid had angered everyone. And he had angered a great Confucian scholar like Ouyang Soon. Not only that, Ouyang Soon said that he was extravagant in the imperial study. Wasn't he indirectly scolding Li Shimin? "Your Majesty." At this moment, Ouyang Soon said angrily, "Although Zhang Feng is a brother of your Majesty and the others, an old man doesn't care. But since he is your Majesty's brother, he should be punished severely. This extravagance and White Deer College is your property. Although old man doesn't know, I'm afraid many people in the imperial court know, right? Once this news spreads, the emperor will be blamed for the rise of extravagance. This matter must be punished severely. Such expensive paper. It was so expensive. Moreover, the quality was so good that it was distributed everywhere. To be defiled by people who didn't even know how to read a few big words, what was this? If this was not extravagance, then what was? What did this mean for the literati? This was a slap to the face of the world's literati. Wasn't it saying that the paper that they thought was incomparably precious was in Lao Tzu's hands? Other than rubbing his face and hands, only mud was suitable for him. This was simply playing to the gallery. Ouyang Soon was so excited. Li Shimin also had a headache. Immediately, he bitterly said, I must give Mr. Xanben an explanation for this matter. Tomorrow, I will follow Mr. Xanben to Shao Mountain and ask this kid what he wants to do. How is it? Ask him in person? Ouyang Sun was no fool. This was simply avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial, alright? Ouyang Sun cupped his fists. He could see that it was useless to say anything. The emperor didn't care. Don't bother your majesty. The old man will personally go to Shao Mountain tomorrow and ask him in person. If he doesn't give the old man a satisfactory explanation, I don't think the literati in the world will tolerate him. While speaking, Ouyang Sun cupped his fists and left angrily. Li Shimin and the others stared at each other for a moment. After a while, Wei Zheng asked with a dignified face, Your Majesty, if Mr. Xanben goes to Shao Mountain, this matter will be completely out of control. It doesn't matter. Li Shimin shook his head with a wry smile. Don't you know this guy? If he doesn't have any ability, would he dare to do this? This kid cares about his life more than anyone else. Hearing this, they couldn't help but understand. The emperor was right. Wasn't this kid trying to find a way to let these people go up the mountain? Why didn't he do it earlier or later? Why did he do it at the gate of Chong? And today, when Ouyang Sun returned to Chong, this was really something Zhang Feng would do. He just wanted to attract the attention of Ouyang Sun and the others, and then, the more he thought about it, the more bitter Li Shimin's smile became. This kid is really troublesome. I just came down from the mountain and he made such a big trouble for me. I don't know if he did it on purpose or not. Fine. Prime Minister Wei, quickly send someone to inform Mr. Bo Shi. Let them go up the mountain together tomorrow. It's not convenient for me to go up the mountain, so I'll leave this matter to Mr. Bo Shi. I understand. But Your Majesty, this paper? Li Shimin looked at the white paper again and couldn't help showing a touch of pain in his eyes. It was such good paper. When he thought about how it was ruined by those people, Li Shimin had the urge to beat them up. He sighed and said, You all go up the mountain tomorrow. Doesn't he know how to make paper? It's not too much to ask for some, right? Such good paper. My study room needs to be constantly prepared. When they heard this, how could they not understand Li Shimin's meaning? His meaning was very clear. He was asking them to go up the mountain tomorrow to ask for the paper. But they also wanted it. Even if they couldn't bear to use it, having it in the study was also a symbol of their status. Even Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin wished they could grow wings and go up to Zhang Feng to snatch all the paper. But this was just a thought. How could Li Shimin be in the mood to continue the discussion? He waved his hand and said, Forget it. All of you are dismissed. Remember tomorrow's matter. Chapter 755. A whole day. The entire Chang'an city went crazy. Especially when some people saw the words White Deer College printed on the paper. They went even crazier. Some people even talked about how Mr. Ouyang Sun, the great scholar of the imperial court, encountered this on his way back to Chang'an. He flew into a rage and hurriedly rushed into the imperial city to report to the emperor. After this, everyone was so shocked that they were charred on the outside and tender on the inside. But on the mountain, everything went on as usual. After Chang Chumo and the others completed Zhang Feng's instructions, how could the 4 great demon kings let go of such an opportunity? One after another, they entered Swallow Descent Brothel. Even Qian Wanli, who had been trembling with fear the entire way, wanted to find an excuse to return home. But Chang Chumo grabbed him by the collar and threw him onto the bed of a Hu woman. He even scared off the Qian family who came to inquire about the news with a glare. On the abandoned mountain, everything went on as usual. The old village chief of Tong Huifang held a meeting. Everyone agreed that Feng Zi's property belonged to Tong Huifang. Everyone became Zhang Feng's people in the midst of Zhang Feng's shock. Now it's good. Zhang Feng was completely done for. He didn't need to care about anything. The food factory had old He, the kitchen and granary had Zhu Zi's father, and the paper mill was personally managed by the old village chief. Whoever dared to enter would have to go through his blade first. And the farm on the mountain was taken over by Zhang Tufu with a smile. But the most important construction site, no one cared about it. In the morning, no one came to urge Zhang Feng to get up. It wasn't until he was attracted by the smell of meat that Zhang Feng realized that the sun, which he hadn't seen for a long time, had already shone through the window and made his face hurt. And Gao Can was still like a wooden stake, standing by Zhang Feng's bed. Even if he was dozing, he still stood there. Through Gao Can's sturdy voice, a pot of steaming meat soup had already been placed outside the bedroom. Rubbing his belly, Zhang Feng tiptoed around Gao Can and sat in front of the dining table. He looked left and right before sneakily taking out a fist-sized wine jar and taking a sip of wine. Meat is a mixture of pork and muscle. According to Zhang Feng's instructions, the chicken bone soup was boiled. In addition, Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao found a lot of nutritious things in the mountains, as well as some strange things made in Tong Huifang. Although it looked a little dark, it tasted pretty good. Just as Zhang Feng was gulping down the broth and gnawing on the braised chicken feet, he inadvertently glanced outside the door and found that Hao Chu-jun and the others were looking around outside. Zhang Feng was amused. "Who's sneaking around? Come in if you have something to say." This voice instantly woke Gao Can up. He shouted angrily, "Which thief dares to harm our dean?" Zhang Feng almost spat out the soup in his mouth. He waved his hand and said, "Go out and eat. Don't come in until you're full." Oh! After Gao Can confirmed the identity of Hao Chu-jun and the others at the door, he slowly slipped away. They were really a little nervous after Gao Can's words. Zhang Feng didn't mind. He invited them to eat and drink, but they didn't dare to. Zhang Feng directly asked, "I remember that I said before that you will come to me for lessons every morning and night, right?" "Yes, Dean." "What time is it now?" 9 in the morning. "Why didn't you wake me up?" This Hao Chu-jun was speechless. Lai Ji continued, "Dean, did you forget? Last night we were ordered by you to observe the veins of nature. We didn't sleep the whole night, but we didn't find anything. We didn't dare to disturb your sleep, so we could only wait at the door." "You guys really stared at the sky for the whole night?" Zhang Feng was a little dumbfounded. When they heard that, their faces turned red. Zhang Feng had the urge to bang his head against the wall. "No, when I asked you to observe the veins of nature, I meant for you to comprehend them in your daily lives. What made you stay up?" "Forget it. Forget it. We'll talk about this later. Go back to sleep. You guys can take half a day off today." Fengzi, bad news. Fengzi, bad news. Just as Zhang Feng told them to rest, Mao Lai Lai, who used to sell fermented glutinous rice, rushed into Zhang Feng's room breathlessly. When he saw Zhang Feng eating, he hurriedly stood at the door, scratching his ears and cheeks. After Zhang Feng hurriedly gave them some instructions, Hao Chu-jun and the others left excitedly, full of gratitude. "Lai Lai Mao, what's wrong? Did you chase your dog out early in the morning?" As he spoke, Zhang Feng called for Lai Lai Mao to come in. "Something happened. I just saw that old guy in the market who went up the mountain before, the one you call Shernan, and a palanquin eating a bowl of fermented glutinous rice at my stall. The 2 old men almost got into an argument. After that, Lao Tzu of the 4 great demon kings came as well. He's running up the mountain now. From the looks of it, he's here to cause trouble. I didn't even have time to clean up my stall before they went up the mountain. Why don't you hide?" Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. His eyes lit up when he saw Gao Can gnawing on a pig's skull with relish. "Gao Can, I have a task for you. And you, Lao Mao, since you're here, can you do me a favor?" Lai Lai Mao had a bad feeling about this. Gao Can didn't care. He nodded vigorously as he chewed. As he spoke, Zhang Feng straightened Lai Lai Mao's body and compared their heights. He nodded repeatedly. "Not bad, not bad. They look exactly the same." Chapter 756. Although Zhang Feng didn't know who they were, yesterday he had already spilled 100 pounds of paper to lure some people out. He had achieved his goal. At this moment, he also knew that it wasn't the right time to meet. If he met them now, he would be torn apart by those angry old men. Zhang Feng ran in the direction of the workshop that not many people knew about. At the same time, he heard waves of exclamations from the students at the city gate. He knew that Shernan and the others must have gone up the mountain. At this moment, just as Zhang Feng turned into a mountain pass, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. At the mountain gate, some sharp-eyed students saw Ouyang Xiu and the others and exclaimed crazily on the mountain. "Someone come quickly! Where's the dean? Mr. Bo Shi and Mr. Xian Ben have gone up the mountain." Everyone was stunned when they heard that. Then, everyone was in an uproar. "What? You said that the 4 great families of Chong and have gone up the mountain? Is that true?" "It's true. Look, they're about to go up the mountain." Everyone still didn't believe it. But when they looked around, they found that Idiot Wei and the others who were in charge of patrolling were gone. Even if they were close to the outpost, the guards here acted as if they didn't see them. Only then did everyone muster up the courage to climb up the watchtower to take a look. Once they saw it, they couldn't help but exclaim again. "Quick! Call the dean! It's really Mr. Bo Shi and the others. I recognize their sedan. They're coming. Quick! Call the dean!" Hao Chu-jun and the others were dumbfounded. When they looked back, they couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. They just came out from the dean's room, but they didn't see the person who was looking for them. And why was this big black man squatting at the door? Where was that person? Did he leave? With such a big commotion, the dean should know, right? Could it be? They looked at each other and just stood silently at the side. Although there were countless thoughts in their minds, they were also excited. Being able to witness the splendor of the 4 great clans was not an easy matter. In the past, they wouldn't even dare to think about it. However, ever since they went to Shao Mountain, they had witnessed the strength of the dean. Not only did he cook without rice to the extreme, but he also attracted countless big shots to go up the mountain. They were so envious that they couldn't help it. If he could continue to learn, even if he didn't know everything, as long as he could learn a little bit from the dean, he would be rich. Especially during the lecture last night, what was the dean talking about? This was something that none of them had come into contact with before, but the dean still explained it to them from the very basics. This made them extremely touched. At this moment, amidst the cheers and excitement of the crowd, Yu Shernan's palanquin was the first to appear before everyone's eyes. How did he recognize the palanquin? The people of this era paid attention to words. Therefore, after they became famous, their mounts or the decorations on their clothes would be engraved or embroidered according to the meaning of the word. For example, the decorations on the curtain of the doctor's palanquin were a picture of a blue cloud with a white background. Above the cloud was the word Zwa, Bo Shi. The word's letter were embroidered on the upper right corner of the palanquin behind him. Anyone who could read would be able to recognize these 2 words. After all, the people of this era liked to use words to describe many things. Sometimes, a word was more useful than a seal. Why? This was the same logic as the branding of the modern era. The word Zwa was embroidered on the palanquin, which meant that the palanquin belonged to him. If others used it without permission, they would be punished with beatings or even beheaded. It was the same for calligraphy and painting. You want to fake it? Fine. Let's see if your head is hard enough. When the 4 palanquins appeared at the entrance of the mountain and pressed down on the palanquins, everyone present bowed and cupped their fists, opening a path to Zhang Feng's room. Even the old village chief of Tonghui Lane appeared at the entrance of the mountain while desperately urging the 2 strong men who were carrying him up the mountain. The moment he appeared, he hurriedly shouted, "Everyone has graced the academy with your presence. The academy is truly impressed. This old man respectfully welcomes everyone up the mountain on behalf of Zhang Feng." Of the 4 people who had just walked down from the palanquins, there were 3 other people besides Yu Shernan. One of them had a white face without a beard and white hair that draped over his shoulders. He looked quite sage-like, but you had to first ignore his belly that was pregnant for 10 months. This person was Chu Suiliang, whose name was Deng Shan. Behind him was an old man with a brandy nose and a bumpy face. He was incomparably skinny and looked around as soon as he came up the mountain. This old man was Xue Ji, whose name was Sidong. After Ma Zhou's whispered introduction, the old village chief's heart thumped. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Ma Zhou felt so wronged that he was about to cry. He was at the food factory preparing pig intestines for old Gao, but he didn't expect to be caught by the old village chief. If not for the old village chief holding him back, he would have already run up to greet them. After the old village chief knew their identities, he became even more attentive. Ayaya, this old man was muddle-headed. I didn't know that the 4 great clans were coming. Please come in. When Yushernan got out of the palanquin and saw that Zhang Feng wasn't there, his heart thumped. This grandson couldn't have run away, right? Chapter 757. At this moment, Wei Zhang and the others saw that something was wrong and hurriedly went up to the 4 of them. Everyone, this is not the place to talk. Perhaps Fengzi is working hard because of the paper. Let's go in first. Perhaps Fengzi will be here soon. Hearing this, Ouyang Sun and the others nodded. Along the way, they didn't even look at the old village chief. This made the old village chief a little angry, but he couldn't do anything about it. He knew that these people didn't even need to kneel when they saw the emperor. The emperor had to stand up and greet them. And him? He was just an old man. However, the old village chief didn't care. He glared at Ma Zhou and the rest. Why are you still standing there? Don't you want to work? Why is the dean's food used to feed you lazy people? If you don't do something, no one is allowed to eat today. Everyone scattered like birds and beasts. The old village head kicked Ma Zhou's buttocks hard. Why aren't you looking for Fengzi? What are you waiting for? Hearing this, Ma Zhou felt as if he had been granted amnesty and fled madly. Only then did the old village chief follow them to Zhang Feng's hut. Zhang Feng's hut wasn't far from the mountain gate. It was only a few hundred steps away. However, the closer they got, the more Wei Zhang and the rest felt that something was wrong. Logically speaking, Fengzi should be in the hut. Wei Zhang could not help but fall a few steps behind the crowd. He came in front of the village chief and asked, "Sir, is Fengzi at the paper mill? Why would he be there if he has nothing to do? I chased him away yesterday. I don't know where he is now. Don't worry, I've already sent people to look for him. He should be." Before he could finish, Wei Zhang had already caught up with Fang Xianling and the rest. After exchanging glances with Fang Xianling and the rest, Chang Yaojin and Qin Qiong found an excuse to leave. Yushernan also felt that something was wrong. He looked at the familiar wooden hut and asked Gao Ken, "Young friend, is Zhang Feng in the hut?" Yushernan's face stiffened. He didn't expect to be ignored by this big black guy. Yu Qigong exploded. "Hey, you little brat! Do you know who is in front of you?" Yushernan, the great Confucian scholar of this era. Gao Ken said in a muffled voice. Yu Qigong choked on his words and wanted to beat someone up. "Since you know that, why are you still blocking the way? The dean is sleeping. No one is allowed to disturb him." The expressions of Ouyang Sun and the others changed. Seeing this, Yu Qigong was furious. F***CK off. If you dare to talk nonsense again, be careful that Lao Tzu will beat you up. He kicked Gao Ken to the side. Gao Ken wanted to fight back, but he was no match for Yu Qigong. He was pinned against the wall by Yu Qigong, unable to move. Yu Qigong was also surprised. Although he was old, he was actually somewhat unable to suppress this young brat. Where did this brat find these freaks? However, now wasn't the time to ask about this. After seeing that everyone had entered the house, Yu Qigong sized up Gao Kansas. "Not bad. You're not bad. You're a potential general. How about it? Follow me?" "No, the dean said that if I follow him, I'll be a general in the future." "Bastard. Damn it. F***CK. Yu Qigong spat a few times before letting go of Gao Kansas. The two of them stared at each other at the door, neither willing to give in to the other. At this moment, as soon as they entered the room, Zhang Sun Wuji hurriedly opened the door to Zhang Feng's room. However, when he peeked in, he was almost suffocated by the stench. He hurriedly took a look at the person sleeping soundly on the bed. Then, as if he was fleeing, he blocked the others who were about to enter and said, "It's too smelly. Let's wait outside. With such a big commotion, this brat should be waking up soon." When Ouyang Sun and the others smelled the stench in the air, their expressions changed. They hurriedly left the house and sat at the door of Zhang Feng's small wooden house to wait. "Brother, you said that Fengzi handed the paper mill to you?" After the few of them sat down, Wei Zhang asked loudly, trying to divert their attention. As expected, when the few of them heard this, they looked at the old village chief. The old village chief was a little unnatural. He seemed a little guilty. He was a little afraid. This wasn't the case before entering the small wooden house. The sharp-eyed Yuchigong's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Was this brat not in the house? About that, Feng Zi is too careless. Also, people are always thinking about him. For example, the wine you drank before. It's such a good thing. But a guy named Lao Li tricked him into giving him the formula. The old village chief said bitterly. Ouyang Sun and the others couldn't help but twitch the corners of their mouths. They drank that wine before. Moreover, it was given to them by Yu Shernan. They knew better than anyone how good the wine was. But what shocked them was that the emperor actually used such a method to trick others. Too shameless. But this little bastard kept such a good thing for himself. It wasn't a good thing. Ouyang Sun couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. He asked, "You'd better talk about the paper mill. Did you know that something happened in Chang'an yesterday? It's because someone fiddled with a lot of white paper with the words White Deer College written on it and spread it on the market. Now that the emperor knows about it, he's furious." The old village chief heard this. His expression suddenly changed. "Oh no, it's bad. This brat got into trouble again." Chapter 758. Just as Zhang Feng was about to enter the workshop that was under construction, he was stopped by an abrupt voice. "Oh, isn't this our dean? Where are you going?" When the voice rang out, the corner of Zhang Feng's mouth could not help but twitch. He didn't see the person, but he could tell from the voice that this was old Yu, whom he had screwed over previously. "Ha ha ha." Zhang Feng laughed dryly and turned around to look at Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin. Qin Qiong was standing at the side with his arms crossed. He feigned surprise and asked, "Oh, old brother Gong, you're in such a good mood. When did you come up the mountain? How come I didn't know?" "When? Just when you were running away," Yu Qigong said with a fake smile. As he spoke, he clenched his fists so tightly that they looked like fried beans. Zhang Feng's lips twitched. "This guy still hates me for the Korean ginseng incident. But what does this matter have to do with you? Why are you here?" Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. He could only hang his head and walk over to the three of them, cupping his hands in greeting. "Zhang Feng greets my three brothers. All right, old Qin, what are you guys doing up the mountain?" As he spoke, Zhang Feng looked at Cheng Yaojin and asked, "Are you guys also here for paper blank? You know about it?" The three of them stared at Zhang Feng speechlessly. Cheng Yaojin slapped Zhang Feng and said, "What kind of rotten idea is this? You don't know. But when you handed out paper blank at the city gate yesterday, Ouyang Sun was so angry that he rushed into the palace to complain. If Lord Zhang Sun and His Majesty hadn't stopped him, you would have suffered a lot this time." As Cheng Yaojin spoke, he couldn't help but laugh. He wanted to pat Zhang Feng's head, but he found that this kid had nimbly dodged. Helplessly, he said, "Let's go and see the four great clans. While we're at it, we can't avoid this mess. If you don't deal with this matter today, then your mountain will be in chaos tomorrow." This time, Zhang Feng was a little flustered. "How is this related to Mr. Ouyang? Hey, didn't you calculate that Mr. Ouyang would return to Chang'an yesterday, and then deliberately waited for him at the Chang'an gate?" Cheng Yaojin glared at Zhang Feng and asked. Zhang Feng was a little flustered. No, I didn't know anything about it. Chen Tinyu, your son, and Li Gan came up with the lousy idea. I only asked them to send free paper to Chang'an City to advertise. Why did we bump into this? These few prodigal playthings. This time they had stirred up a disaster. Zhang Feng did think of attracting these people to go up the mountain, but he didn't expect it to be done in such a way. If he had known, he wouldn't have let these people do such a stupid thing even if he was beaten to death. The ancients treasured paper as much as their wives and children. Especially for literati, paper was simply a treasure. Although he wasn't in Chang'an, it didn't mean that Zhang Feng didn't think of it. A group of sloppy people holding thin paper and rubbing it on their faces, and then letting the great Confucian see it. What was this? This was a slap in the face of the great Confucian. What the F***ck. Not to mention others, even if he saw it, he would be furious. These prodigals, Damn it, what the hell are they doing? Old Chun, have your son and the others come back? Chang Yaojin, Yu Qigong, and Qin Qiong looked at each other and asked, Are you sure you didn't plan this in advance? Zhang Feng was anxious. If I had planned this in advance, do you think I would have run away now? I wanted to lure the 4 great clans up the mountain because of their enthusiasm for paper, but I didn't want to slap them in the face. Do you think I would do such a stupid thing? This time, Chang Yaojin also felt that this matter was serious. He looked at Yu Qigong and said, Old Yu, what do you think we should do now? Yu Qigong was stumped. If this kid was the one who did it, beating him up today would be a light punishment, but if this really wasn't the one who did it, then it would be difficult. For a moment, the 4 of them looked at each other, and no one could think of a solution. Finally, Qin Qiong came up with an idea. Kid, this isn't the time to pursue this matter. Do you know what Mr. Ouyang said in the palace? What did he say? Zhang Feng asked hurriedly. He used the extravagance of the previous dynasty's Emperor Yang to describe what you did yesterday, and even scolded loudly. The Emperor and the others also lost face. This is your fault, so you have to stand up and take responsibility for this matter. Yu Qigong was speechless and said again, Do you know why the previous dynasty fell? It was because of the excesses of extravagance, and your actions yesterday have angered the great Confucians and the students of Chang, and so, you have to stand up. You are the one who caused this, so you have to stand up. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. Could it be that he had made a mistake? Why was it all his fault? What kind of logic was this? Chapter 759. In the end, Zhang Feng had to admit defeat. After all, he could imagine the consequences of this matter. Just as the 3 brothers had said, if he had not brought along Ouyang Sun yesterday, everything would have been fine. But he was unlucky. Now that he had bumped into them, there would be a lot to say. There was no other way. Zhang Feng could only accept his bad luck. He obediently followed Yu Qigong and the other 2 back to the entrance of the academy. When the 4 of them appeared, they saw Yu Shernan leading Ouyang Sun and the other 2 commenting on the academy's construction. The 4 of them even chatted with Wei Zhang and the others, bursting into laughter from time to time. However, when they saw Zhang Feng, their faces instantly turned cold. They stopped laughing and chatting. With their hands clasped behind their backs, they strolled into the living room of Zhang Feng's wooden hut and occupied the few chairs available, waiting for him. When Zhang Feng entered the hut, he realized that the few tea leaves he had in his collection had already been divided among them. Even the canister used to store the tea leaves was gone. The white wine mao was also nowhere to be found. It seemed that it had been discovered long ago. Zhang Feng took a deep breath. Damn it! They were F***king bandits. However, he really could not do anything about these old men. As soon as he entered, they pretended not to see him and continued to chat and drink tea, discussing the present and the past. Yu Qigong and Chang Yaojin signaled to Zhang Feng with their eyes, then turned and slipped away. Zhang Feng had no choice but to brace himself and salute them. Junior Zhang Feng greets the teachers. I was busy just now and did not personally welcome all of you. Please forgive me. No one responded. Zhang Feng had to raise his voice again. Chu Suiliang rubbed his belly and said, I was wondering who it was. So it's our young friend Zhang Feng. What are you trying to do? Zhang Feng's face twitched. Wei Zhang and the others also looked at Zhang Feng with strange expressions, but did not say anything. On the contrary, Ouyang Sun slammed the table with a gloomy face and said, Zhang Feng, you brat, old man trusted you so much. Back then, because of your 3 poems under Lao Li's coaxing and pestering, he recommended you to become a great scholar. This is really the shame of our lives. 3 poems? Fortunately, not all of her feelings had flowed out. Zhang Feng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. When Ouyang Sun saw Zhang Feng's calm expression, he couldn't help but become even angrier. We think so highly of you. When Chang and University was first established, do you know how many literati were guiding you behind the scenes? But we've all helped you to take on the responsibility. But you, on the other hand, have created such an academy in this godforsaken place. Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you have some ability? The corner of Zhang Feng's mouth twitched. What was he going to do? Hold a criticism meeting? Ouyang Sun's scolding made Zhang Feng feel like he was being criticized. However, the more Ouyang Sun said, the more flustered Zhang Feng felt. He hurriedly said, "Teacher, in order to run a school and let more poor people have books to study, I've taken out all my family's money. Now, look at the poor people who live in this kind of wooden house. What's more, I don't even have a home anymore. I just want to set up an academy so that I can better fulfill my responsibilities as a scholar. I would never dare to forget the kindness of my teachers, nor would I dare to forget the teachings of Confucius. That's why I set up an academy to protect the poor people in the world. I'm slow-witted. I don't know what I've done wrong to make my teachers so angry." Ouyang Sun stood up coldly and walked around Zhang Feng in circles with his hands behind his back. "You're just talking nonsense. What did old man and the others teach you? Teachers? We don't dare. If this old man had a disciple like you, this old man would have dragged you out and beaten you to death long ago. How could I allow you to embarrass all of us here today? Otherwise, how could I allow all of us to bear the fallacy of being extravagant? Old man, you don't learn good things at such a young age. You have too much money to spend. Instead of learning good things at such a young age, you've learned to be so extravagant. What will happen if you continue like this? Today, you must give us an explanation. Otherwise, when we go down the mountain today, the four of us will jointly go to the Ministry of Works and Rights to abolish your title as a great Confucian scholar." Wasn't this too much? What was going on? Zhang Feng almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He was indeed a world-famous great Confucian scholar. His eloquence was awesome. Don't I want to lose face? Zhang Feng was baffled and immediately asked, "Esteemed teacher, may I know what this student has done to make esteemed teacher and the others so angry?" "Humph, brat. You really don't remember those shameful things you did." Before Ouyang Sun could say anything, Chu Suiliang was angry. "Until now, you still don't know how to repent." "I don't know what I did. Teacher, please tell me." Zhang Feng asked in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Chu Suiliang stood up and stepped on the soft muddy ground. Zhang Feng felt that it was moving. "Boy, the 300,000 pigs a few days ago were caused by you, right? This? Yes." Zhang Feng couldn't deny it and could only admit it. Anyway, whatever he said now would be wrong. He wanted to see what these great masters wanted to do. Seeing Zhang Feng admit it, Ouyang Sun couldn't help but snort coldly. Wei Zhang and the others pretended that they didn't see or hear anything. They gathered together and seemed to be arguing about something. Seeing that they didn't speak, Zhang Feng had to ask, "Mr. Bo Shi, what do you think of the braised meat these days?" Chapter 760. Yu Shinan, who was chatting happily with Fang Xianling, was suddenly pulled out by Zhang Feng. He was speechless, but he still nodded. "The braised meat you ate was made by this kid. The food factory at the foot of the mountain is where he made it." Ouyang Sun and the others knew about the braised meat, but they didn't know that it was made by this kid. After all, when Yu Shinan gave them the braised meat, he didn't say where it came from. They thought that it was something newly invented by Yu Shinan. When Yu Shinan finished speaking, Zhang Feng cupped his fists gratefully and quickly struck while the iron was hot. "Respected teachers, you know the current situation of the Tang dynasty. You also know that in order to control the locust plague, Lao Li bought a large number of pigs, chickens, and ducks to eliminate the locusts. But now you see the locusts are gone, but the food is gone too. People don't have enough to eat, so how can we feed them? So this kid is bold. Instead of letting them starve to death, why not make them into delicacies on the table? It can also let the poor people eat more. What's wrong with this?" Ouyang Sun's anger calmed down a little. "Although what you're doing is not befitting of a great scholar and will be criticized by many scholars in the world, what you're doing is not wrong. Tomorrow, we will help you clarify this matter. But you must not do this in the future." When Zhang Feng heard this, he hurriedly bowed. "This student understands. Let's drop this matter for now. But shouldn't you give me an explanation for what happened in Chang'an yesterday? Don't you know the price of the rice paper? Or do you think you're so great because you're rich? You even put the name of White Deer College on it. Do you think it's glorious? When Zhang Feng heard this, he said, "This student doesn't know what he did wrong. This student did this to promote the new paper I just invented. On the other hand, I want to promote White Deer College from a more diverse perspective. I want to let more students from poor families see hope. However, there is something that is hard for me to say." After Zhang Feng finished speaking, he hastily scanned the crowd and said, "Master, you should know that I have given my all for the sake of this academy. However, the construction of this academy is inseparable from money and food. With so many people and so many mouths to feed, I am helpless. So I came up with this idea. Even though the publicity this time was a little too big, and it even offended you, Master, this was definitely not my intention. It was Li Gan and the others who acted on their own. I didn't know that you had returned to Chang'an yesterday. Don't know? If you don't know, you can do this? Do you know that if we meet other people, boy, it won't be us who will go up the mountain today. It will be everyone in Chang'an City, including Hongwen Guan and Imperial College. You still don't know your mistake. You're still trying to force your words onto others? If it weren't for your instructions, how could they not know the severity of the matter?" The more Ouyang soon spoke, the angrier he got. He wanted to raise his hand and punch someone. However, Chu Suiliang quickly stopped him. "Brat, you know the price of this piece of paper. You also know how important it is to the scholars of the world. What you did yesterday was indeed too much. This is equivalent to telling the people of the world that the things you think are incomparably precious are worthless to you. Do you know the consequences?" Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard that. "But this thing is worthless to begin with, isn't it?" Eft. When the people who were drinking tea heard that, they couldn't help but spit out the tea in their mouths. They had seen people who bickered, but they had never seen someone who bickered like that. Worthless? So you're saying that us old folks and the world's literati can't even afford paper? This is such a precious thing, and you don't care about it at all? What does that mean? Emperor Yang of Sui ordered people to wrap silk around trees to pave the way. I'm sure he had the same idea as you, right? It's worthless too. Ouyang Sun was so angry that he was shaking all over. Fine, fine, fine. It's worthless. That's right. You're right. You have a big family now, and you have properties all over the world. Even if you don't have money, you can sell that Baiji recipe and become rich again. Old man is poor. Of course, he can't compare to you. His sarcasm was a little too much. It was also very obvious. Anyone who knew these people knew that they were the richest people in the world. Not to mention Ouyang Sun, even Yu Shernan, whom Zhang Feng knew before, was a first-class family in the Han Dynasty. Who in Jiangnan didn't know the Yu family? Almost half of Jiangnan had the surname Yu, right? How dare you call yourselves poor? If you're poor, you can sell a piece of calligraphy for tens of thousands of gold. You call that poor? When Zhangsun Wuji and the others saw that Ouyang Sun and the others were really angry, they couldn't sit still anymore and hurriedly stood up. Zhangsun Wuji coughed and said, "Fengzi, stop messing around. Apologize to Mr. Xian Ben and the others first." Zhangsun Wuji was indeed the #1 peacemaker in the Tang dynasty. He basically didn't participate in any arguments, but when it came to smoothing things over, he would be the first to stand up. When Zhang Feng saw Zhang Sun stand up, he suddenly realized what was going on. What the hell am I doing? I'm courting death. If he angered these old fellows, he would be dead for sure. Chapter 761. It was true that harmony was the most precious thing. Why should he argue with a group of old guys here? What's the point? If he annoyed them, how could he teach in the academy? Zhang Feng immediately cupped his hands and bowed towards Ouyang Sun and the others. If this little one has offended you in any way, I implore the 4 esteemed teachers to not blame me. If esteemed teachers feel that this piece of paper is good, then it is this little one's fortune. How about this? When all of you descend the mountain, this little one will personally take 20 jin of paper and personally deliver it to your residences as an apology. Ouyang Sun was stunned. Chu Suiliang, who was about to sit down, almost squatted down and crushed the stool. In an instant, the small wooden house became terrifyingly quiet. Everyone stared at Zhang Feng in shock. 20 kilograms? Damn it. This kind of paper. It was dozens of times better than the rice paper. Not to mention Ouyang Sun, even Zhang Sun Wuji and the others wanted to beat him up at this time. He deserved a beating. This was simply outrageous. Firstly, they would be labeled as extravagant in the imperial court. Second, they were simply too disrespectful to their elders. What a prodigal. This kind of white paper was not only more expensive than the rice paper, but it was also worth the same price as the rice paper. How could he give 20 kilograms of paper, which was worth 1,000 strings of coins per kilogram? We're brothers. So why didn't you come to inform me at the very first moment? Even if it was just to inform me, it would have been fine. But what happened? You didn't know anything. Then he was inexplicably scolded for a long time. At the thought of the smooth and white paper, everyone felt as if there were 10,000 horses galloping in their hearts. How could this kind of paper be measured by kilograms? What was this? This was a complete humiliation, and he humiliated the 4 Confucian scholars in public in front of so many people. At this time, Zhang Feng was even more surprised when he saw that everyone was silent. Could it be that it was too little? Thinking of this, Zhang Feng suddenly patted the back of his head. Yes, as the 4 Confucian scholars, 20 kilograms was indeed too little. Zhang Feng couldn't help blushing. It seemed that his vision was still too narrow. After measuring the output, Zhang Feng said carefully, "How about 50? No, 100 kilograms. What do you think about 100 kilograms? When Zhang Feng said 50 kilograms, he actually felt a little guilty. After all, the production cost of a caddy of paper was less than 10 copper coins, and that was after including the wages of the workers. Although paper wasn't worth much now, the paper-making workshop had just started. 400 pounds of paper was already a day's worth of output. Furthermore, Zhang Feng didn't know if he could produce 400 caddies in the second production. If he could only produce 300 caddies, it would be troublesome. The most important thing was, right now he had yet to write his textbooks and other things. Seeing that there was only a month or so left before the academy officially opened, he was also anxious. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to pull in a few heavyweights for the academy to hold the fort, and that he could free himself to be a teacher, Zhang Feng would really be reluctant to do so. After all, although this thing was nothing to him, it was really a rare thing in the outside world. Ouyang Sun and the others were strangely silent at this time. They wanted to say something, but in the end, they couldn't say anything. They knew the purpose of coming here today, and obviously they already knew why Zhang Feng did this. However, to give away 100 caddies of such good paper in one go, Ouyang Sun still didn't know what to say. At this time, Chu Sueliang's hands were constantly intertwining, and his brain was also rapidly calculating. 100 caddies of white paper. What kind of concept was this? Even if the production cost of a caddy of paper was 1,000 copper coins, how much would 100 caddies cost? Suddenly, he felt that his brain wasn't enough. However, if he were to use the abacus now, wouldn't it be too much? When Zhang Feng saw this, he was even more anxious. "Teacher, old son, say something." He was already so generous. Were they still not satisfied? After Ouyang Sun and the others looked at each other, they finally all stared at Zhang Feng. Ouyang Sun surprisingly calmed down and asked, "Boy, are you humiliating old man and the others?" Zhang Feng was a little confused, but in an instant his face changed greatly. It was said that the people of the Tang dynasty were straightforward. My King honest. Isn't it too unkind? Do you think 100 caddies of paper is not enough? Even if you are a great scholar, even if you are the Ouyang family, the Yu family, the emperor, the richest person in the dynasty, you may not be so arrogant to give away so much paper at one time, right? People's hearts are not enough. Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only grit his teeth, stomp his feet, and stretched out 2 fingers with difficulty. 200 caddies. 200 caddies shouldn't be considered a humiliation, right? I can't give more. I can only produce less than 500 caddies a day. If you can wait for more than a month, let alone 200 caddies, even if it's 2,000 caddies, as long as you can hold it, I can give it to you. Pa! When the words 200 caddies came out of Zhang Feng's mouth, in an instant, the living room was dead silent again. There was only the sound of someone crushing a cup. Chapter 762. Ouyang soon only felt uncomfortable in his heart. It was as if Zhang Feng was sitting on a mountain of paper, waving at him. Did you see that? What you regard as a treasure, as your life, is just paper to wipe your ass. When I say I'll give it away, I'll give it by caddies. And it's 200 caddies. Ouyang soon had the urge to beat Zhang Feng to death. Although the purpose of today's visit was to confirm whether this thing was made by Zhang Feng. It was indeed for paper, but it was 200 caddies. It made Ouyang soon feel like he was looking at a nouveau riche. Not only him, but everyone present could not stand Zhang Feng's clamor. Whether it was Ouyang soon, Chu Suiliang, or even Yu Shernan who was prepared for this, they were trembling with anger, glaring at Wei Zhang and the others. It was clear that he was saying, look at this, this is your brother? Are all the people in the imperial court so extravagant? At this time, Wei Zhang and the others could not sit still. A few hundred caddies. 100 caddies. For people would be 400 caddies. This was already an astronomical figure. And it seemed that this guy had not touched the bottom line yet. But they also knew that they could not continue. If this continued, not to mention Yu Shernan and the others, even they would go crazy. Cough, cough. Wei Zhang coughed. Seeing that no one was paying attention, he could only stroke his beard and say, Feng Zi, you're simply a prodigal thing. What are you doing? You're insulting Mr. Bo Shi and the others. Why aren't you apologizing to Mr. Bo Shi and the others? 200 caddies of white paper. Do you know that even the emperor only gets 1 caddy of rice paper a month? Even Mr. Bo Shi and the others can only use 1 caddy of rice paper for half a year unless it's necessary. It's not that they are unwilling, it's that they can't buy it. But you, the moment you open your mouth, you ask for 200 caddies. You are simply... Zhang Feng scratched his head. Looking at Wei Zhang and the others' slightly angry expressions, he immediately said, Old Wei, 200 jin per person is already my limit. And this is the total number of papers that will be produced tomorrow and the day after. I don't know if there will be any wear and tear when the time comes. If there is wear and tear, it will take another 4 days. After all, there are still impurities on the white paper, and it was only improved today. But even if it's a full production, at most, I can only produce 1,000 caddies per day. Don't worry, if any of you feel that it's too little, I'll take care of all the paper you use in the future. This is the limit of what I can bear right now. After all, you all know that this kid's academy needs paper everywhere. Moreover, this kid also needs to eat. On the one hand, it's for the convenience of the academy. Of course, it would be best if I could earn some money while helping all of you. After all, as you can see, I have a big family to feed now. Hearing this, in an instant, the living room once again fell into a dead silence. Pin drop could be heard. 1,000 caddies a day? This kind of paper. Ouyang soon, who felt humiliated just now, felt even more suffocated at this time. If the stimulation just now was like carrying 100 caddies on his back, then now it was like carrying a mountain on his back, making him breathless. Wei Zhang couldn't sit still anymore. Seeing Ouyang soon and the others' faces trembling, he hurriedly asked, Fengzi, how much do you think the daily production can be? 1,000 caddies? But this is under the condition of full production. Now, at least in a month, on average, it can only reach 500 caddies a day. Zhang Feng said very sincerely. Seeing that Ouyang soon and the others' faces still didn't improve, he said again, to reach 1,000 caddies a day, the materials must be prepared a day in advance, and the people in the paper mill must be familiar with the manufacturing process. It will take more than a month to reach 1,000 caddies a day. After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng clasped his hands and said, Dear teachers, the technology and manpower for paper making are ready-made, so it doesn't cost much. In the future, when everyone's technology becomes more and more mature, that is, when we can reach 1,000 caddies a day, I intend to set the price of each piece of paper at 1 copper coin per caddy. Of course, this is just my guess, but it's a little difficult now. I still need to work harder to let the students of the academy fill their stomachs and still have some surplus. 1 copper coin per piece of paper? At this time, everyone in the room felt their blood pressure soar. What did this mean? If the production cost of white paper was not more expensive than rice paper, Even if it was only the cost of rice paper, they would definitely make a lot of money. At the very least, in their hearts, no matter how cheap this thing was, it would at least be 100 copper coins per caddy. But they never thought that this bastard would set the price of paper at 1 copper coin per caddy. This meant that paper would no longer be a luxury item in the future. Even ordinary people could use it. Every aristocratic family would flaunt their wealth by collecting books. However, if Zhang Feng were to do so, wouldn't these methods of flaunting their wealth become the laughingstock of the world? What a good piece of white paper! Moreover, the production was so high, and the price in the future would be cheaper than the cheapest hard yellow paper in the market. What did this mean? The price of yellow paper now was 20 copper coins, but in this era where paper and silk were expensive, what did this mean? Zhang Sun Wuji and Yu Shernan asked almost at the same time, Feng Zi, your paper? Does it have a shortcut? Tell us. Chapter 763. Yu Shernan hurriedly asked, Little friend Zhang Feng, tell me, is there something special about your paper-making technique? Hearing this, everyone could not help but perk up their ears and hold their breaths. Zhang Feng smiled. The most difficult part of paper-making was to make the birch bark, grass ash, bamboo, and the like into pulp. This required a lot of bamboo, charcoal, and manpower. The process was also complicated. But Lao Tzu had been reprimanded by all of you for so long, why should Lao Tzu tell you? I Zhang Feng don't need to eat? Lao Tzu, the thousands of people in White Deer College, don't need to eat? If he told you this thing so easily and got tricked by those aristocratic families, wouldn't Lao Tzu have nothing to eat? It would be difficult for him to even make a profit in the paper-making market. He was not that stupid. After all, he had to think about the future of the college. What if, 3 years later, there was really a genius who could not study and wanted to go into business? Wouldn't that be equivalent to giving Zhang Feng a free long-term labor? But Zhang Feng also knew that he had to tell them now. He was still hoping that he could use this to recruit Ouyang Sun and the others. Sigh! Zhang Feng sighed. Only then did he use his trump card. While Zhang Feng sighed, Yu Qigong, who was outside the door, instantly felt goosebumps all over his body. This grandson, he was going to trick people again. Yu Qigong could not help but look forward to it. Blackie, let's make a bet. I guess these 4 masters will definitely be tricked by this kid today. Do you believe me? Cheng Yaojin rolled his eyes and did not say anything. He only raised 3 fingers. I bet 3,000 strings of strings. At this moment, in the living room, Zhang Feng slowly said, I still have a good brother who is not here today, but you should have heard of Lao Li. The entire college was set up by Lao Li and me. Although this paper mill is my business, Lao Li, Old Wei, and the others have all helped me a lot. Wei Zhang and the others blushed. They were a little embarrassed. Seeing this, Zhang Feng said, Of course, although you are busy, if it weren't for your son, I wouldn't even dare to set up Chang and University, not to mention the academy. So I plan to divide this paper mill into 6 parts, 1 for each of us. This can also give Li Gan and the others a status. Otherwise, I know that if not for you secretly telling them to do their best, White Deer College today. Hearing this, they could not help but be shocked. This kind of paper, no matter how expensive it was, but since this kid dared to sell it for 1 copper coin per sheet, it was obvious that the cost of the paper must be ridiculously low. However, even if it was sold for 1 copper coin per kilogram, they could imagine what kind of reaction it would cause once it was put into the market. Perhaps, when the time came, the profits of this thing would not be lower than fine salt. This was something that only those who knew that table salt was created by Zhang Feng would know. At this moment, Zhang Feng pretended to be reluctant and said, Of course, if you want to know, I can tell you the process of making paper now. Enough! Shut up! Du Ruhui hurriedly shouted. He and Yu Shernan hurriedly shouted for him to stop. Idiot! This was the height of idiocy. How could such an important thing be announced in front of so many people? Wasn't he afraid that others would hear? Yu Shernan saw that it was about time and sighed. You were the one who created this thing, we won't covet it. We just want to ascertain your character and whether you are really so extravagant. That's enough. We were just casually asking and you, kid, spoke without thinking. You even revealed your family background and gave away a few 100 kilograms of paper. It's clear that you are not smart enough. This kind of thing is something that you, Zhang Feng, can settle down in life and bring blessings to your descendants. How can you show it to others so easily? It's clear that although you have a lot of ideas, if you don't have anyone to guide you, you will suffer a great loss sooner or later. Hearing this, Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. Master's words have enlightened this student. Can be seen that this little one is really... I hope that Master can see this little one's sincerity and stay. Otherwise, this little one doesn't know when this little one will do something stupid. With such a good downhill path, Zhang Feng would be a fool if he did not take it. A big fool. As expected, Yu Shernan heard this and sighed with a smile. Not bad, you are teachable. But do you know how much it costs to hire a great scholar to teach you? Even if it's 1,000 taels of gold. I can get it. Ha ha ha. Yu Shernan laughed and scolded. What if the old man wants the stars in the sky? If teacher really wants it, 10 years, no. Within 5 years, I will definitely make something that can fly in the sky and give you one. Wasn't it just a meteorite? Although the chances of going to the moon were slim, he did not believe that the dam system would not activate in 5 years. Even if it did not activate, what did it matter? Lao Tzu could make it himself. If it did not work, he could still act. It was still possible to find a meteorite. When the time came, he could make a hot air balloon. Wouldn't he have everything? Chapter 764. Yu Shernan was a little annoyed. The old man gave you a way out, and you didn't even know how to take advantage of it. Instead, you took advantage of it? All right, the old man will stay on this deserted mountain and see if you can pluck the stars for the old man in 5 years. If you can't, the old man will definitely punish you for deceiving the world. This student understands. Of course, I won't let you get away with it for nothing. When will you be able to make that wine? Yu Shernan, Ouyang Sun, and the others looked at each other and smiled. Zhang Feng was counting on his fingers, but he didn't notice. He said, logically speaking, there are still 10 days, but I still have some wine next to my tavern. What? You still have wine? Yu Shernan was speechless. Last time when the old man came up the mountain, didn't you say that there was none left? Ahem. Yu Qigong had come in at some point. He coughed and said, last time when Laoli came, this bastard also said that there was none left. In the end, he still made a jar under the bed. It seems that there is still a lot left. Zhang Feng was anxious. He swore, in all honesty, I really can't do it this time. You all know about the brewery next to this tavern. Although it brews beer, when this kid went up the mountain, he saw that there was not enough food to finish, so he went over and brewed a batch. He got someone to watch over it. Hearing this, everyone snorted a few times. Obviously, they didn't believe it. Enough, are you all drunkards? Yu Shernan laughed and interrupted everyone. He said, since you call us your teacher, we'll hand it over. However, we can't give you anything less than what we've promised. You must be served with wine and meat every day. If we miss a meal, we'll leave the mountain. This is a matter of principle. There is no room for discussion. As for the money, you can just convert it into good wine. We don't care about that little bit of money. All right. Zhang Feng was overjoyed. Yu Shernan looked at Ouyang Sun and the others and said, the three of you? What do you think? There's nothing wrong with this kid's character, right? Do you want to stay? While speaking, Yu Shernan patted his forehead and said, that's right, kid. I remember now. If you come up with anything good in the future, hand it over. If I find out that you're hiding something, the old man won't let you off. Zhang Feng felt like he was being squeezed. However, he still nodded and admitted defeat. Seeing this, Yu Shernan and the others nodded in satisfaction. Let me introduce you. As he spoke, Yu Shernan pointed at Ouyang Sun and said, this old fellow's letter book. Zhang Feng's heart trembled. Student Zhang Feng greets Mr. Shinmoto. Forget it. Forget it. Remember to bring me good wine and good dishes, as well as white paper every day. This student understands. This fatty's courtesy name is Deng Shan. Zhang Feng was shocked when he heard this. Oh my God! Didn't history say that Chu Suiliang was thin? He was so fat that he looked like a ball. However, he didn't dare to say anything and hurriedly saluted. "This is Si Tong." Student greets Mr. Si Tong. "Okay, okay, okay. Don't make empty promises. As for coming to the academy, we still need to observe your character. You should be teaching and educating people, but you actually come to do this kind of unorthodox thing." While speaking, Si Tong added again, "However, for the sake of your 200 pounds of paper, if you do this every month, the old man will come down." Zhang Feng's mouth twitched. However, in an instant, his mouth was grinning from ear to ear. "This student thanks all of you. Teachers, are you sure you want to thank us?" Ouyang Sun and Chu Suiliang looked at Zhang Feng with a smile. In an instant, Zhang Feng felt that he had been set up. But now, Zhang Feng knew that there was a trap, but he had to jump into it. He cupped his fists and said, "What are you talking about, teacher? Of course, what's mine is yours. Just take as much as you need." "Okay, the old man is happy to see your white paper. How about 1,000 pounds of white paper and a cart of white wine every month for each person?" "Sir, do you want to eat paper? 1,000 pounds? Can you not be so snobbish? Do you really think this is a charity hall? As long as you like it, even if you need to wipe your ass with paper, I'm willing to give it to you." Chu Suiliang was stunned by his words. However, he shook his head and said, "You see, you're cornered now. Forget it. Since you've done so much for the sake of the students in the world, the old man won't make things difficult for you. What do the three of you think?" While speaking, Chu Suiliang and the others laughed heartily like roosters that had won a fight. Yu Shernan laughed and said, "It seems that Brother Fong and the others have something to say to this kid. Let's go. I'll bring the three of you around Shao Mountain. Let's go to Elder Sun's place." The others asked in surprise, "You're talking about medical god Elder Sun? Is he really at White Deer College?" Yu Shernan nodded. "I don't know what kind of magic this kid has to make Elder Sun come to the mountain. Didn't you guys want a drink? He should have some left over. Kid, wait a moment and get someone to send some food over. You don't have any manners at all. How can you sit on a cold bench for more than 2 hours when you have guests?" Zhang Feng felt so wronged that he was about to cry. "Sir, dear second master, the moment the few of you came, you gave me a good scolding. You actually gave me some time, ah." Chapter 765. Under Zhang Feng's aggrieved gaze, Yu Shernan and the other three laughed and left the cabin. They paced with their hands behind their backs as if they were inspecting their own property. Of course, in the end, for the sake of paper, wine, or braised meat, they even forgot that Zhang Feng had impersonated their student. Perhaps they also tacitly approved of Zhang Feng. After all, they had recommended Zhang Feng, and Zhang Feng could be considered their student. Otherwise, if anyone dared to call them that, they would have to argue with him from beginning to end, and then send him to the authorities to be dealt with according to law. Obviously, they tacitly approved of this matter. As for Zhang Feng, when he was caught by Yu Qigong, he had already thought of this point. As long as he agreed, everything would be much easier. However, Zhang Feng was also a little annoyed. This old man really had some tricks up his sleeve. At first, he was confused. This matter, according to the situation in the Tang dynasty, would indeed arouse public anger. However, in the end, he did not expect that this matter would end like this. However, Zhang Feng also knew that these four masters would definitely not take advantage of him without doing anything. Now that they had gone out, they should be thinking of a way. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng felt a little grateful. If it were not for these people, he would really have to think about how to face the public anger of the world's literati and the revenge of those big families. After all, it was the appearance of his paper that made what they were proud of become worthless. Fengzi, since their matter has been settled, let's talk about our matter now. Yu Qigong and the other three sat in the seats of Yu Shernan and the other three just now. They also pulled Zhang Feng up from the chair. Zhang Feng instantly woke up. "Old Yu, are we okay?" "Okay. You made me suffer a great loss." Yu Qigong glared fiercely at Chang Yaojin, who was drinking tea with a smile. This made Zhang Feng even more baffled. Cough, cough. "Feng Zi, let's get down to business." Yu Qigong coughed and said, We saw your paper too. Kid, you have such a good thing, but you don't want to take it out? You caused us to be scolded by Mr. Shinbin yesterday. You're too mean. Tell me, how are you going to compensate us? I don't have time, do I? Didn't I send Li Gan and the others to deliver a letter to you yesterday? Zhang Feng suddenly thought of something and asked, Oh right, are Li Gan and the other little bastards back yet? Did I tell you when I bought it for you yesterday? The few of them were stunned upon hearing this. You look at me and I look at you. Seeing this, Zhang Feng's vision darkened. Bastard. What a beast. He was simply a beast. I asked you guys to go out and do something. What the F***ck are you guys doing? If they had followed his instructions yesterday, would things have turned out this way? According to yesterday's arrangement, after they distributed the flyers, the first thing they would do was to bring the paper to show off. But in the end, even now, old Li and the others didn't know about it. Could it be that they did not help him just now? So that's what happened. Damn it. Look at how Lao Tzu is going to deal with you guys now that you're back. If he doesn't want you to dig dung, he'll make you move bricks at the kiln. Sigh. I've met the wrong people. I was just wondering if I should give them 10% of the paper mill. Now, it seems like I should go to hell. Cough, cough. The few of them coughed when they heard this. Feng Zi, you're not being nice. We all heard it. Words that have been spoken are like spilled water. How can you take them back? No, this is not negotiable. What a joke. They had earned a lot of money from that salt. Now that they had finally seen something good, how could they just watch it slip away? Feng Zi, this matter has alarmed His Majesty. Do you know that after Mr. Xian Ben caused a ruckus in the imperial study yesterday, Lord Zhongsun came to us and asked us to deal with this matter properly. His Majesty is very angry. Do as you see fit. Zhang Feng was shocked when he heard that. He did not know that the emperor would be alarmed. However, he had seen it on TV. With the status of these great scholars, even the emperor had to be polite to them. They really dared to angrily rebuke the emperor. Zhang Feng could not help but feel a little flustered. Then what do you think we should do? Since all of you are here today, I'm sure you've already thought of a way, right? Cough, cough. Wei Zheng coughed and was a little embarrassed to say it. He nudged Zhang Sun Wuji, who was sitting next to him with his elbow. Zhang Feng had always been looking down. When he saw Wei Zheng nudge him, he shook his head speechlessly. He raised a peace sign and said slowly, Each of us will give you 200 caddies of white paper. We'll help you settle it. Also, Li Gan and the others. What? 200 caddies per person? You really think highly of me, Zhang Feng? 200 jin per person. In an instant, Zhang Feng thought about it and realized that in this workshop, not only did they not use it for themselves, but they had also given it all away in a month. How could he make any money? Zhang Feng immediately got up and ran out. No way. Get lost, I won't see you out. Chapter 766. Zhang Feng was completely enraged. So, he had been set up by Yu Shernan and the others. Zhang Feng could still hold it in. After all, he could still afford to hire a big shot to watch over the place and teach for free. But how could Zhang Feng do something like looting a burning house? 200 caddies per person. Although the latter part was not mentioned, he knew it would definitely be 200 caddies a month. Plus, it would be from their own share. That is to say, although Zhang Feng monopolized 50% of the profits, everything, including the expenses on the mountain and the monthly allowance for Yu Shernan and the others, he would not be left with a single cent. What the hell was this? Seeing this, the others. They were also anxious. Yu Qigong flashed and hurriedly picked up Zhang Feng, who had just walked out of the room. Feng Zi, let's talk things over. We're brothers, aren't we? Listen to me about the 200 caddies of paper. Zhang Feng was pressed down on the chair. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and said, I'm not listening. Do you think I'm running a bank? I have thousands of people on this mountain, and they all need to be fed. If you do this, won't I become free labor? I won't do it. You can't say that. Look, aren't we also trying to shut the mouths of those people in the imperial court? And look at what happened yesterday. It has already made many people in the imperial court and those scholars in Chang and unhappy. They all need to be bribed. 50 caddies. Zhang Feng stretched out his hand. Just 50 caddies, no more. How could he not know what these people were thinking? 50 caddies. This was all for the sake of his brothers. If it were anyone else, Zhang Feng would have chopped them up with a big knife. Wasn't this obviously a scam? 200 caddies. This was like slaughtering a pig. Feng Zi, look at the relationship between us. You have the nerve to take out 50 caddies? Are you? Yu Qigong was about to bargain. He was interrupted by Zhang Feng. You don't write or draw every day, so what do you need paper for? Don't think I don't know that you want to sell it. Zhang Feng was anxious. Yu Qigong wasn't angry. Instead, while Zhang Feng wasn't paying attention, he patted Zhang Feng's shoulder. Zhang Feng almost fainted from the slap. Fengzi, look, these old fogies have that thing in your paper mill, but this old man doesn't have it. Also, you cheated me of so much money last time. Now, I don't even dare to go home. Today, I don't have any other choice. If you don't give me some benefits, I won't be able to explain it to my family. Zhang Feng was anxious. Why was he being blamed for this? What happened last time was your fault, all right? It was your fault for kicking you out. You didn't have the ability to keep an eye on your wife. How could you blame me? Don't you have any shame? However, Zhang Feng thought about it and said, fine. Since that's the case, old you on account of Laoli, I'll give you 50 kilograms of paper. I want to have it every month. You have to give me some money for alcohol, right? My wife is fierce. Last time you... Fine. 50 kilograms. 50 kilograms a month. That should be fine, right? Zhang Feng was annoyed. More importantly, he was being strangled. No one dared to be careless. Who would be able to withstand a slap if they were caught off guard? Seeing Zhang Feng compromise, Yu Qigong happily let go of Zhang Feng. Upon seeing this, Qin Xiong wanted it, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. In the end, it was Yu Qigong who said, Ayaya, look at what kind of brother I am. I've already said that brothers have to go through thick and thin together. I'm good, but old Wei, if brother Zhang Feng looks down on you, how about I give you a little every month? Qin Xiong, Zhang Feng, Wei Zhang and the others. Shameless, too inhumane. Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't say anything, Yu Qigong continued to hold Zhang Feng's hand and rubbed it in his palm. The calluses on his hand almost pulled the skin off the back of Zhang Feng's hand. Zhang Feng's entire body was trembling. Sigh. Look at brother Zhang Feng's soft skin and tender flesh. He's no rougher than anyone else. As he spoke, Yu Qigong slapped his head and said, Oh right, I remember now. I have a distant cousin who hasn't gotten married yet. I heard that you haven't gotten married recently, right? Zhang Feng's expression changed when he heard that. He looked at Yu Qigong's round, plate-like face in horror, then looked at the fleas scurrying about on his curly beard. His mentality completely exploded. He asked in a trembling voice, I'm already engaged. I love my fiancée very much. Don't you dare have any designs on me. You haven't gotten married yet. Have you? Besides, who doesn't know that you've gotten the courtesan of Yen Lai restaurant? Why are you still pretending? I'll let my distant cousin come to Chang'an tomorrow. Stop. Look at my memory. How could I forget about old Qin? Don't worry. I'll send 100 caddies to your residence tomorrow. Now, you should be able to let me go, right? After saying that, Zhang Feng looked at Yu Qigong angrily. Yu Qigong laughed out loud. He then let go of Zhang Feng. The moment he let go of Zhang Feng fled. Seeing that, Yu Qigong shouted behind him, My distant cousin will come to Chang'an in a few days. I'll let her come directly to the academy then.